Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the City Council Special Study Session of Tuesday, March 31st, 2026. I now call the meeting to order. Now please stand and let's say the Pledge of Allegiance together. Ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, would you please do the roll call?
Mr. Mayor, the record will reflect that all council is present.
Wonderful. Okay, so we have one item tonight. It's the study session on the CIP, Capital Improvement Program for 26 and 27, and a 5-year look into the CIP budget. So remember tonight, we're going to have a presentation by staff, and then we're going to be joined by our chair and vice chair of the PACS Commission, who are going to speak during the staff presentation on some observations by the PACS Commission. And council and staff, remember this is more informal. If you'd like, you can use first names and things of that nature. Also, please feel free to, if you have a question that pops up, just as long as we don't talk over each other, just ask for the floor and we could talk in the middle of the presentation if that's what the council wants to do. Otherwise, save your questions and you'll have time later. So, Madam Clerk, it's hard for me to see. Are we going to do public comments after the presentations?
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, good. And so public comments are after the presentation. They'll be just on this item. And then we'll take the comments from the council. But we'll do a check to see how many people are going to speak. Normally it's 2 minutes at study sessions, but if we have a light crowd, we can bump that up to 3 minutes if people want to do that. Okay, so with that, who wants to go? Raja, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, City Manager, staff, and the community. We are here to talk about our proposed Capital Improvement Program budget for fiscal year 26-27. I'm joined here for the presentation by our managers. We have our city engineer, Sung Yang. We have Rob Ryan, our maintenance services manager. And we have Patrick Bauer, our Deputy Director of Public Works. And, in the preparation of all this, I was also assisted by our senior management analyst, Anna Baca, she's in the audience, and Kevin Gaxiola in the audience too. And I also want to thank our finance staff for their collaboration throughout the process. With that, so just a quick overview. Public Works staffing, we have, it says 79, which actually should be 75 full-time staff. We have 4 that are frozen, so it's 75 full-time staff spread across 5 different divisions: administration, engineering, general services, which deals with facility maintenance and fleet, transportation, and maintenance, which is all the street maintenance and park maintenance comes under maintenance services. Now, the CIP process, we started this a few months ago, and it's financed from multiple funding sources. We take into account federal, state, county, local funds, and then we have to recognize that some of these funds have restrictions, and we want to make sure that we comply with all those restrictions. And they involve oversight from other government agencies. So for example, right now we are going through an audit on our Measure M program. The same thing happens with even at individual project levels. We get audited on how we are spending any grant monies. And it requires coordination from all departments. We work with our city attorney office quite often on all of our projects. And then for this CIP, we have a threshold of $30,000. That has been a limit since I started working here. So it's 30,000 is a limit to be on the CIP list. Under 30,000, we treat as general maintenance, and it comes under different categories. Now, unlike the operating budget, the CIP is spread over multiple years. So anything that's budgeted into a CIP program doesn't expire at the end of the fiscal year. It gets carried over to the next fiscal year. And that's because the reason why it's multi-year is because projects are complex. We do some projects within the same year, but many of them require multiple phases. It requires outreach with the community, sometimes have environmental reviews that might take some time. And then of course, the process of going through the design phase, bidding phase, project award, and then construction. So sometimes construction is the fastest part of the project. But that's how it is. So that's why it's a multi-year program. And our projects do get a lot of awards. Most recent one was for Adams Pine Creek project. We're getting multiple awards on that one. And again, this is a picture from our fourth floor wall. With that, I just, before we jump into 26, 27, I want to go over some of the 25, 26 CIP accomplishments, and our staff will help me on this one too. So, Sung, you can talk about this.
Thank you, Raja. So, good evening, Honorable Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Sung Yang. I'm your city engineer, and it's my pleasure to discuss some of the accomplishments we had of the previous or current fiscal year. One of our bread and butter projects is the citywide street improvement projects, and it's an annual project, and in which we go through most of our residential streets and repairing not only the street, but also the sidewalks, curbs and gutters, and access ramp improvements throughout these residential areas. Once again, it's an annual project. We go through each and every part of the community throughout the city every year, in which we improve the roadway infrastructure of our city. For this previous project that we just completed, the improvements included the Mesa Verde, College Park, and other neighborhoods within our city. And it's all in an effort to maintain our city's goal of having a pavement condition index, or PCI, of at least 85 here in the city. Thank you. And next, I'll defer this to our Deputy Director, Patrick Bauer, for the next slide.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. A couple of the projects that we were very pleased of the last fiscal year was the police department carpet and indoor paint. If you haven't been over there, you really should go and check it out. It's really given a nice facelift to the department. And in addition to these two pictures, what you see with the flooring and the paint, we also did some graphic upgrades on the walls, some new office markings, and we did some little touches here and there. So if you haven't been over there, I'm sure the chief would love to take you around. I'm really proud of that project. The next one that's currently underway and estimated to be done the middle of April is the Norma Herzog roof replacement. We're really excited about this project too, because this is quite the unique roof. It's not your usual asphalt square shingle. This is a very intricate metal seamed circular roof that the contractor is really proud to add to his portfolio, and they're doing a really nice job over there. So that should be done the middle of this month. And I'll pass it over to Rob Ryan.
Thanks, Patrick. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council. So one of the park projects we're nearly completed, and we're just putting the finishing touches on Brentwood Park. I think this project probably exemplifies Raj's comments on sometimes the planning takes a lot longer than construction. I think we had the groundbreaking in January, and we're ready to open that up to the public this Friday afternoon. So we're really excited about that. Original playground equipment was installed in 1995. So we got 30 years of use out of that original equipment. We took a underutilized sand volleyball court and added a separate play area for children 2 to 5. So we kind of separate those big kids from the little kids. There's 4 slides, 7 climbing components. We replaced a picnic shelter there with a brand-new metal shade structure that'll last quite a while. New LED park lighting, some access from Monte Vista, a DG path from Monte Vista to the Brentwood side. And just this last week, we installed the sidewalk poetry, which I think came out rather nice. So that was installed on Tuesday of last week. So again, I'm ready to open that up at the end of this week, and we're really excited about it. I know the neighborhood kids, they've been peeking through our screening, and they're anxious to get on there and get on that equipment and play. With that, I'll turn over to Director Seth Rahman for the rest of the presentation.
Thank you, Rob. So the next one is Fairview Road improvement. If you go south south of Fair Drive on Fairview, you see new improvements being done on Fairview Road. These are active transportation projects. Project on this section of Fairview. And this construction should be completed by June of this year. The outstanding items are mainly a couple of signal upgrades. One is we're installing a bike signal at Fairview Wilson, southbound Fairview at Wilson. The other one is a new hawk signal for pedestrians to cross at Valley Forge and Fairview Road. So these once it's done, the project is complete. And it provides a nice separated bike facility for our bicyclists, and we're serving many schools, and we have OCC in the vicinity, so it's a much needed improvement for the bike community and active transportation community in this area. Also, you see a bus boarding island. That's the first in our city that was implemented in this section of Fairview Road. And we also added new landscaping and irrigation as part of this project. We also completed design of major projects in this fiscal year. And that includes Fire Station number 2. That is in the final plan check process. We should get our building permits sometime this month, and we should be ready to advertise that project. Costa Mesa Skate Park, the design is complete, project is advertised, and we are coming to you for award at the next meeting. We'll talk about that at an upcoming slide. And Ketchum-Leibold Park expansion, construction is underway, but the design was completed in this fiscal year. Same with Shalimar Park. The construction was already awarded. We have a pre-construction meeting scheduled in a week, and construction should start very soon. And the final one is signal modernization project. This is a citywide project where we are improving our signal system, and the design of this is complete, and it's in the bidding phase right now. Now for the 25-26 budget, we did request a partial waiver. The city has a capital asset needs ordinance that requires that the city fund 5% of our general fund towards capital assets and 1.5% towards information technology needs. So we did, as part of the 2025 budget, we deferred some projects that were approved for 24-25 of approximately $2.4 million. And then in 25-26, we also reduced the amount allocated to the new CIP projects by $1.2 million. So this required a waiver of the CAN ordinance as part of the 2025-26 budget. And here is the project list. And the idea is these projects should get priority funding as we move forward. So a couple things that we took into mind when we worked on the 25-26 budget. One is we wanted to address if there are any ongoing projects, we want to make sure that if there is funding need, we need to address that. And then some projects, for example here, the Community Choice Energies is a good example. That project was not being considered this time, so that's not being funded at this point. For other projects, if there is money available, we are not asking for any further amounts. And projects that are of lower priority, we moved it out a bit. So once we get through the next few slides, you'll see what projects we are recommending for funding in the next fiscal year. Just want to point out that we do have quite a few projects still underway or are scheduled. We have about 80 some projects, 86 projects still on the books that are, some of them are ongoing. There are 20 on that list that haven't started yet. Just want to point out at this time when we came to you last year, we had 30 projects that haven't started. So we did make some progress. So we have fewer projects that haven't started, but most of the critical projects that have deadlines, that have funding commitments, they're all underway. Now the 26, 27. As I mentioned, this projects were identified based on, one is we looked at your council goals and priorities. The input we get from various commissions, committees, and also what we hear from the community. Our own infrastructure and facility needs. This year we did come to you with a few assessments. We did a facility needs assessment, we did a park assessment, we did a tree canopy assessment. All this guided us in coming up with a list of projects for next year, but also guided us in what to put in the next 5-year in the plan also. And then we have various departments that come with their requests and priorities. So those were taken into account. And of course, we have to live within the constraints of our budget. Now, the CIP does include a minimum requirement that's for maintenance of effort. This is required to meet Measure M and gas tax funding requirements. So according to them, you cannot use those funds to supplant what the city has already been spending on capital projects. So we have to ensure that we meet that minimum commitment that we have been making. And we are supposed to hear from them an updated value of that requirement in about a week or so. But we think at this point, we meet whatever was expected. Now we're recommending a total of 39 projects with a total CIP amount of 33.4. And there is a future bond financing of about 12 million for Fire Session 2 that's included. Now again, just want to point out, all of this is still, I want to call it as a preliminary CIP list. It's not final until we get the final numbers from our finance department. So if the revenue projections change, these are based on information we received back in January. So if things change between now and between then and when we come to you with the final budget, we might adjust the total amount or the projects accordingly. And here is how the projects are, the funding is being split. The future bond financing, of course, has the biggest amount of 12 million, followed by the grant funds. We did receive quite a few grants this year too, and that's about 5.7 million. I'll let you know which ones they are. And then the capital improvement fund, that's our general fund allocation of 5.55. We'll get to that also. And then the other funds are in the Measure M2. Those are grant funds from Measure M2, gas tax, traffic impact fees, the money we get from cannabis business, and also park development fees of approximately 100,000. This is your attachment. This is attachment 2, I believe, in your staff report. It's hard to see, but this lists all the projects that we are proposing for the upcoming CIP. Again, the bulk of the funding is going towards facilities. Again, this includes 12 million of the bond fund. So if you take that off, this is the highest one is actually going towards streets. Parks is getting about 1.63 million. Transportation about 6.6 million. And I will highlight some of the major projects that we are proposing. We're starting with the citywide alley project, Sung.
Yes, thank you. So for the next fiscal year, for the proposed for fiscal year 26-27, this is our annual citywide alley improvement project. And this is a project started several years ago, and it's nearing its completion, and the results speaks for themselves. So all the deteriorated asphalt alleys that we had in the city, they have been repaired with new concrete paved alleys, which will last for decades. And the alley improvements, once again, it was a multi-year project, and we're coming near to the end. And after this project, we'll have remaining 14 alleys to be designed in fiscal year 26-27, and it's our hope that we can wrap up the project within the next 2 years. Thank you.
Patrick?
All right, the chillers, I know, Mr. Mayor, you said the chillers aren't a sexy project, but they're much needed, and I want to thank council for supporting the chillers for City Hall. They should be here this month, and I hope to have them installed before the summer hits to keep us all nice and cool so we can continue on. So next year, we'd like to replace those two over in the PD. And then the next one is to continue funding for the tenant improvement for the 911 call center. This would be a complete renovation of the inside of our 911 call center. Upgrades would include new thermal, moisture protection, fire suppression, plumbing, all the bells and whistles, new dispatch centers, offices. It would look fantastic and much needed, and I'm super, super excited to move forward with this project.
Next up is our citywide tree maintenance, $200,000 in gas tax funding. This is going to provide enhanced maintenance to our median and parkway trees that are susceptible to the effects of some of the unprecedented weather events we've had, particularly unseasonal winds that have popped up. So we're looking to just get some added maintenance and get us closer to that 3 to 5 year maintenance trimming cycle that our goal would be. And it also allows us the ability to plant some new trees within those medians and parkways. Next up is Harper Park Playground improvements. Harper Park Playground was one of 5 playgrounds that were identified in our recent park assessment as being low rated. The playground itself was rated as a 2. The overall park was a C, which are a couple of the lower rated ratings that you can receive. So this would include the removal of the existing equipment, the installation of modernized playground equipment that would have integrated shade, which is much needed. You can see from those pictures, actually no shade there at all. So we'll add some shading to that. Replacement of the safety surfacing, and then, of course, removal and replacement of tables, benches, and trash cans. Next up is Moon Park improvements. We're budgeting $50,000 just for conceptual design and community outreach, and also coordination with other agencies. So I think this is going to be a key period of time. There's an easement there that we share with, obviously, the county with the bike trail. There's a Orange County sanitation line that runs nearby that they have to have access to. It's actually about 20 or 30 feet of that park actually belongs to the county. There'll be some coordination with them. And also, more importantly, it allow us some time to coordinate with the residents there. We had an opportunity to meet with them, myself, Director Gruner, one of our PAX commissioners. And there's a lot of need out there. There's a lot of different ideas out there. So it'll give us time to coordinate with them, have some meaningful engagement, come up with some conceptual designs that they can look at, enhance the safety out there. For instance, at our PAX Commission meeting, we had residents that look at the moon there, and they see that as just an integral part, an iconic feature of that park. And then you might hear from some residents this evening that talk about that being an obstruction. They can't see from one playground to the other, and they'd like to see that gone and expand that playground. So there's a lot of talk that needs to be kind of meted out and discussed through community engagement. This will give us the opportunity to really see what the budget need is there. Is this just a simple playground replacement, or is it a much larger project where we can provide some direct bike access, separate the bikes from the playground, which right now that path for the bikes is right next to that playground, and we experienced that being out there, e-bikes zipping by with probably about 10 to 15 feet of that playground. So this will give us a year to kind of figure out, engage the community, and really set the budget appropriately and give the residents the park and playground that they really want. So I think this is an important first step in that endeavor. With that, I'll turn over to Raja.
Thank you, Rob. So,
Sorry.
the next
Sorry.
project is the Costa Mesa Skate Park Expansion Project. We're very happy to introduce this. This is construction of a new improved features with a very well-known designer named Spawn Ranch. The park will include the installation of a new pump track, and the project was funded through Orange County Board of Supervisor Katrina Foley. We had couple of outreach meetings. We heard the voice of the community, and it will be coming soon to the City Council for award. And we also have available funding from prior years with this project. Thank you. So, Raja?
So, Mr. Mayor, just to expand on this one, so we are going to come to you with a more detailed discussion at the upcoming council meeting. So this is asking for some additional funding. We have bids for the project, and the bids came in while they meet the current project needs. We need funding for contingency as well as for construction management and support during construction with materials testing. So there is this funding need. Hopefully we don't use up all this money, but we need to budget additional funds to make sure that the project can be completed as designed. The next one is Adams Avenue Multipurpose Trail. So this is a project on Adams between Royal Palm and the Santa Ana River. You have seen this project come to you before, and we are working on the design of this project. It's a multi-phase project. Right now, we are working with Edison to underground the power lines, and we are hoping that work would start in a month or so with Edison undergrounding. Meanwhile, we applied for grant funding, additional grant funding to complete the project. So this will reduce the city's commitment by $2.77 million. So we had prior grant, we added more to this through grant funding. So the city commitment towards this will be reduced as we move forward. And we'll come to you next year with the final allocation and hopefully award of this project. Mesa Del Mar multimodal access. Here also, we received $350,000 in grant funds to implement parking protected cycle tracks on Junipero in this section, just between Arlington and Presidio. This also will implement the first ever, we're doing a raised intersection at the intersection of Junipero and Arlington. So you have seen, when we did speed humps, here the whole intersection will be like a speed hump. It'll be raised to that level. And the project will also include pavement rehabilitation. So we'll work on design this upcoming fiscal year, and then hopefully construction in '27. Before I get to this one, I just want to touch back on the project, on the CIP amounts. So, when, in the report, we talked about, the CIP being, the general fund portion of the CIP being $5.55 million. This was based on the information we received back in January. However, based on some new information, this funding could be reduced to approximately $5.2 million. But we do recognize that there is $600,000 of CAN repayment that's also out there. So our finance team anticipates that they could fund the full CAN repayment for the upcoming fiscal year and whatever is required by the CAN. So we may have another $300,000 available for future allocation. Again, this is based on some preliminary numbers from finance. We'll have more accurate numbers as we go forward. With that, we did go to Finance and Pension Advisory Committee of IPAC, and it was presented on March 11th. So the committee appreciated all the information, and they would like to hold a follow-up meeting to come up with a final recommendation. We also went to PACS Commission, and so we presented the 1 year and CIP, 1 year and 5 year CIP that's related to parks on March 12th. So the commission recommended, while they agreed with the recommendations, they did have a few other comments, and those are listed here. They wanted us to prioritize Marina View Park and Wilson Park for this year, mainly dealing with some of the items identified in the park assessment study. We looked at these improvements, and we think those can be accommodated using our operating budget. We don't need a new CIP allocations for that. They also identified some needs for 27, 28 for community gardens, add $50,000, and for West Side Park development, add $400,000. And this is for the 27, 28 fiscal year. And then for Fairview Park and skate park projects, they heard our presentations on that, and they are looking for ways to cut back on either the project scope or look at other private funding to reduce the city's contribution. And they also recommended that the 5-year CIP be revised to exclude parks that are in better shape at this time. Last couple slides. So the 5-year CIP is included in attachment 4, and that provides projects that were deferred in this, deferred from consideration this upcoming fiscal year, or other projects in our various assessments that were identified for implementation. The projects in years 2 to 5 and the future column are for planning purposes, and there is no funding attached to those. But they do serve as reminders for us when we see grant opportunities. We can go back and look at those projects and apply for grants. As I mentioned, the assessment studies were used. So this table is new feature for this year. What it shows is, in the column that says 5-year CIP, this is, so we looked at in our last year or in the current year 5-year CIP, we projected projects for 26, 27. So it's comparing that list against what we are proposing. So it shows how are we matching what we expected for 25, for 26, 27, or are we drastically changing? For most part, we are consistent. There are some projects there are some changes. One notable one is, for example, Shalimar Park expansion. We did identify a need for $350,000. This is for the next phase of Shalimar. But when we received bids for Shalimar Park construction, they came in significantly under our estimate and under our budget. So we have funding in our current allocations to do the planning for the second phase of Shalimar. We might need more funding down the road for whatever we decide. It's whether it's a community center or park expansion, it depends on that. So, but we'll come to you when we know what the actual needs are. Again, this lists the CAN repayment schedule. It identifies the total deferment over the past couple of years and what is the year 1 payment requirement is. And our finance team thinks that they can fulfill that requirement. So our next steps, we need to adopt our budget, including the CIP, by June 30th. And as I mentioned, the proposed CIP is approximately $33.4 million. And as I mentioned, we have 86 ongoing projects, and 66 are ongoing and moving well. And we request council to provide us with direction on this on the 26-27 CIP budget and also the 5-year CIP budget. This shows a tentative schedule for adopting the budget. And the next meeting is operating budget review by FIPAC on April 8th. And then we have the Planning Commission approval, followed by several city council approvals. With that, staff's available to answer any questions.
Mayor, may I just add one thing?
Yeah, of course.
Yes, sorry.
Thank you. So what is not shown on the calendar is a city council study session that's scheduled for April 14th, 2026, where we will be providing the city council with a mid-year budget update, a preview of the fiscal year 26-27 budget, and a discussion of the CAN ordinance. April 14th.
Thank you. Okay, so council, do you want to ask questions now of the staff, or should we hear from the vice chair and the chair of PAX? Whatever you want to do. Let's go. Why don't you all come up, and then everybody will be here together like one big happy family, and we can ask our questions. So, yes.
I think it's valuable to make sure that Mayor Berton is here as well to hear this. I don't know if he just stepped out for the restroom.
I don't know where he is, but I don't think we should wait. He probably just took a little break. Go ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and City Council. I'm Dr. Kelly Brown. I'm chair of the PAX Commission, and I'm here with the vice chair, who will introduce herself in a minute. So we're going to tag team this presentation for you all. We have a variety of things that we want to share. We're going to start by talking process first, just for a few minutes, so that you understand where our recommendations come from. And then we have specific recommendations that you've had a chance to see, but we want to give you a bit more detail around that. First, I just want to acknowledge that this is the first time, at least since I've been on PAX, which is over 5 years, that we've actually been here before you presenting on CIP recommendations. And I think we're really proud of what the PAX Commission has done. We've been working hard to make recommendations and have been evaluating a lot of data in order to make these recommendations. So I just want to acknowledge that. And I also want to acknowledge that you have the hard budget decisions, but we just love parks. So we're going to stand here and we're going to advocate for all the park stuff that we think are important, but we are prioritizing them. And so that's where the data points came into play. PAX has been very engaged and active the last year, and it's been really rewarding to be a part of that process. And so you're seeing just two of us here, but the entire PAX, is, hopefully you've seen from the memo, we're really involved in these conversations. In evaluating and providing these recommendations to you, we relied upon a few data points that I just want to put out there, and I don't have time to go through them, but one of them is the PAX values. So you have them in front of you. We spent the summer in a subcommittee working on these values. We then worked on them multiple meetings as an entire commission. We approved them unanimously. So all of your representatives on PAX are fully behind these values. And when we talk about various things in PAX, we're utilizing those values. We actually created those values with the idea that they would be the basis for CIP recommendations. The second thing that we analyzed as we were making these recommendations is the playground assessment. And I know that you all haven't seen that document in detail yet. It's a 300-page document, so get ready for that. We did read it, we did analyze it, and we did talk about it. And so as we were making our recommendations, we were utilizing our collective analysis of that document. One note I would say is that 12 of our parks got a C rating. So we think that we can do better. And as we were making recommendations, we want to prioritize getting some of those parks out of the C range. And then the last thing is the open space master plan. That was at the last bit of data that we were using as we were making our recommendations. And with that, I'm going to pass it on to Vice Chair Wright.
Hi, I'm Cheyenne Wright. I'm very excited to share this information with you. I think it was an amazing exercise for me to use all of my strengths. One of them is reading and synthesizing really long master plans and documents. And so I want to bring your guys' attention to the visual map that I created. Because you guys haven't seen the playground assessment yet, this honestly speaks volumes to what it covers. There was 5 different variables that were assessed. We spent about $50,000 looking at every single park. And at first, what, yes, starkly stood out to us, and in my opinion, sounded a lot worse than it was in reality, as someone who also visited all 12 of the C-rated parks, is that we have a dozen parks that are in need of some love. However, I find that parks are really personal for people and are a difficult emotional decision. How do we prioritize? And so I actually also took the data from the Open Space Master Plan draft, which we spent over 6 figures investing into. And although we never finalized it, there's a really valuable data in there about specifically park deserts, which is parts of our city that a resident has to walk more than 15 minutes to get to their park. If that's inaccessible to them, then they don't even have a neighborhood park to complain about. And so in yellow, you're gonna find, as identified in the Open Space Master Plan, not by me or my opinions, both the yellow is the neighborhoods that have park deserts. The C, which is the pink dot, that's going to be parks that were rated poorly in the playground assessment. And then the letter key is actually the demographics of the people that live in those neighborhoods surrounding those parks. So specifically what I focused on after receiving the playground assessment, not only just going and visiting those parks, but then reporting back to our commission about specifically the 5 parks that are a C rating and near a park desert, which, as you can see at the bottom, is pink and yellow. Then I actually went back to the playground assessment and read in detail what qualified that park as a C. And oftentimes there was actually like almost a most urgent or borderline like pertinent safety issue that put that park as a C-rated park. And so I think in summary, just on this visual map and to give you guys, you know, the most important highlights of the playground assessment, it's that, yes, we do have 12 parks that we need to prioritize in the next 5 years. However, the range of those C-rated parks I found were vast. Some are actually beautiful and totally okay, in my opinion. And others, for their demographic, for the neighborhood they're around, the people they serve, and the urgency of the safety issues, we do recommend that they get prioritized in the CIP.
So now we just want to talk about some of the specific recommendations, and what you were presented just now in terms of the recommendations from city staff is what we saw at our meeting, and then we had a variety of feedback. That feedback you have in front of you, but it's not built into the recommendations from staff. So we're here to advocate on behalf of the entire commission for our recommendations. Starting first with this year or with next year, we want to prioritize Marina View and Wilson. These are 2 parks that received a C rating. One of the reasons that we chose these is that they are close to park deserts. Another reason is that they are in neighborhoods of high density housing. And the third reason is that we see them as low-hanging fruit. So we want, and I heard city staff talk about how they can be addressed. We just would advocate that it's really important to identify and to make good on repairs to these parks. So Marina View and Wilson being 2 that we would prioritize. There is also unanimous support on the Commission for Community Gardens. We see again and again an increased need for community gardens. We have a wait list of, I believe, over 200 people. They also generate income for the city. People pay to do these gardens. And there is a lot of interest in having a teaching garden. So thinking about the educational outcomes for our younger populations with a garden close by. Someone floated the idea of Neth Park. I know for the longest time, there's been an idea for having a sculpture garden at Neth Park, and those of us on the commission aren't sure where that came from. We would advocate that if Neth Park stays on a CIP list, that it has some function related to community gardens. So we're just putting that out there as something to pursue. Small amount of money set aside for that so that we can actually examine how our community or how community gardens are working in the city. Do they need to be changed? What are the possibilities for that? And then the last thing I would advocate before handing it over to Vice Chair again is that West Side Park Development. So for as long as I've been on PACS, West Side Park Development was on the CIP. It just kept getting pushed year after year after year after year. It's gone now. Like West Side Park Development, that funding that was on there last year, totally disappeared. I want to see it back. We want to see it as a commission, see it back. We set aside a modest sum of money, $400K, just so that we can get something started on the West Side Park development. It's important in part because this was something that was identified in the open space master plan by City Council. So we would advocate that West Side Park development be prioritized on the 5-year CIP at an appropriate time.
Okay, so to close us out, in addition, there was a few other things that we gave feedback on in receiving the draft CIP. I want to bring what I'm looking at and what's on our screens is the comparative budget between what we received and then what we're recommending, and I made this. And then on the right-hand column, you can see our comments. So I kind of want to bring your attention to a couple of things. First, I want to address the slush funds. As the CFO of a business here, I appreciate that we set aside funds by category of park, but what's interesting after reading the actual playground assessment, I'm actually going to advocate that we go more that we view our CIP as more of an itemized bill rather than a lump sum, because I think it's problematic and results in more, yes, John.
Cheyenne, can somebody, is it possible to make this bigger?
Bigger.
So we could see it? Does somebody have that technology? Yeah, but it's the same size on my thing. I mean, I might get.
Yeah, I did try to squeeze a lot all in one page for you guys.
Oh, you can't do it all on one page? I don't know. It's just hard for me to read. Maybe
Is
I
this
just
better?
need a magnifying glass or something like that. No, it's all right. It's all right. Because then you can't all get it on one. So this is what you're reading from right now, the recommendations?
Yeah.
Okay, that's beautiful. That's much better.
Yeah, so I kind of bolded ours, but even before I start, because it does relate to specifically calling out Marina View and Wilson, is we have these slush funds that go towards like more general project types at all parks. And what became really clear to me is advocating more for an itemized bill style rather than the slush funds. I think it is why we're in a problematic situation, because it becomes more reactive based to solving problems rather than intentional. For example, I didn't really see a lot of parking lot needs in the playground assessment at C-rated parks. And so I'm just a little nervous. I'm really glad that, Marina View and Wilson are likely going to get addressed through other funding, through maintenance line item budgets, but I'm just putting that on your guys' radar. Two other things that stood out to us. We're sort of under the theme of putting more money into projects that are already getting a lot of money, specifically more than $1 million, and that's going to be Fairview Park and the skate park expansion. Those intended additions have different uses. One is the Fairview Park Master Plan implementation, and two is getting us to that contingency to actually close on the skate park and get the pump track, which absolutely was a beloved and highly requested feature. As a commission, though, we did not really support nor see the need to put more money behind implementing a master plan we've already spent a lot of money on. It's also specifically using park development funds, which doesn't seem like the best fit. So we did want to bring that to your guys' attention. Secondarily, with the skate park, I personally was involved in conversations of bringing in industry stakeholders in the skate community. We are the hub and capital of the skate and streetwear culture. And to me, we are not going to be able to get private funding for Harper Park, Marina View Park, but we would be able to for the skate park. And so my urge and encouragement is, rather than using general funds for a project that would bring a lot of PR and a lot of media attention and attract brands like, Volcom and Ruka and Hurley, all these brands that are from Costa Mesa, Vans, I'd like to somehow both meet our contingency rate, yet also pull back and motivate staff to close a deal with a private funder. And then, big picture, we got a lot of fluff on the CIP. And I think when you look at the park assessment, we have enough C-rated parks to keep us busy for the next 5 years. And so I'd really encourage us to be judicious and diligent in the parks we have on our 5-year. And am I missing anything else? Okay. And we are open to answering any of your guys' questions, and we hope that the visuals we provided in the memo was helpful.
It was. Thank you. Thank you very much. Now we're all ready for questions. Council, Lauren.
Okay, thank you. First of all, that was a great presentation, very informative, extremely thorough. So maybe I missed it. There was a lot. You guys covered a lot of ground. So I'm going to look at the park assessment introduction that you did because I'm a pictures guy. First of all, can you tell me how you came about giving certain parks a C rating? What qualified that? And the reason I'm asking that is because I have a park, Geisler, however you want to say it, Geisler Park behind my house. And then you wrote Phil, Bank, or Bark, I'm not sure. Help me out with the C rating. Help me out with how you identified that as a middle. I kind of feel honored that I'm in middle class, but a middle class family, and what your ideas were there.
Yeah, so I'll go first, and then I'll let Director Ryan go. We hired an independent consultant, and by we, I mean staff, hired an independent consultant. They went to every single park. They provided pictures, and they all had the same equal objective criteria. It was everything from the playground, which did have the heaviest weight, to the landscaping, the facilities, benches, water fountains, and they ranked it from 1 to 5. And 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. That, let's say, out of 25 in total then, generated a letter rating, A being the best, D being the worst, C is really the bottom, quartile of our parks. So we, as a commission, me personally, did not generate that. And in fact, I really appreciated being given, an objective rubric, as objective as it gets. And that's how Geisler ended up as a C.
Okay.
Can I answer your question about the bark? So specifically,
let's go there.
Specifically, when I went to Geisler, and then specifically if you look into what put Geisler as, unsafe, is the bark levels are so low that it's just like compact dirt/concrete. And you actually have the same problem at Marina View. So if a kid were to fall, we're actually not compliant with safety requirements. You need at least 3 inches. I don't think it's 3 feet. So I think you need at least 3 inches of that padding material. And let's see. Rob, how did I do?
And then, you're doing great. Just don't even pay attention to him. You have another yellow circle next to Geisler Park, but there's nothing identified there, and it looks like it could be in my district. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's Del Mesa Park. I'm just not sure. It's blank, and there's nothing going on there. So what are we?
Yeah, well, that proves the point. So the yellow circles are empty because they're park deserts with no parks in them. So those are neighborhoods that basically families have to drive to the nearest park. And so the rationale is all the families living in that yellow circle in your district, they're driving to Geisler Park, and then Geisler Park sucks. So let's make Geisler Park better.
Or they're driving to Wilson and there aren't bathrooms.
Yes.
It's killing me, though. It's Geisler.
Okay, you know, this was contested in our commission.
That's okay.
I just know the family. It's Geisler.
Geisler, okay.
It's fine. I called it Giesler too. So, do you guys have a proposal for Giesler Park of what you'd like? I have some ideas, but do you have some ideas you'd like to share? Do you have them right now that you could?
I did propose that we fill the bark at a minimum, but that's actually only $12,000, so that's under the $30,000 CIP threshold, so it should go in one of the slush funds, actually. We could absolutely do more. I hope you guys can see the amount of restraint I was trying to show in our recs, though. I was trying to really focus on the most important, most urgent needs at the most important parks.
I'd love to see a community garden in that park, just for what it's worth.
I appreciate these questions, and this is where we've been working to get the PACS Commission is to make those types of recommendations. This has been a culture shift for us, so I'm just going to acknowledge that, to have any recommendations. So I appreciate that. We would like to do more, and this is just the beginning of that.
All right, thank you for your presentation and answering my questions. If there's staff that wants to kick some rocks, please feel free. That's all I have.
Any other questions? Andrea?
Were you gonna go, Manny?
I have one clarifying question. First of all, good job with the presentation. I really appreciate it, guys. They mentioned in the presentation that the West Side park funding has been depleted. If memory serves me correct, did we not use that money to purchase the building next to Shalimar Park? Yes.
Can you repeat that question?
Did we, so point of clarification, I'm misremembering. Did we not use the West Side Park Fund money to purchase the apartment complex next to Shalimar Park?
We used a portion of it. We used a portion of it. Of the full, we used about 200,000 of it to pay for the Shalimar property, correct?
Okay, thank you. And then where's that remaining 200 grand right now?
The remaining 200 grand was utilized. The other portion was utilized from the general fund. The general fund paid for about 1.5 million. The park development fund contributed 200,000.
Okay, thank you.
Andrea?
Thanks. My questions are for staff, so I don't, unless anybody else has anything for the commissioners.
I think our list is. Oh, I have questions for commissioners, if that's.
We don't mind waiting. Go ahead.
Okay. All right, the skate park. Look, I'm not super excited about putting more money into this either, since it was supposed to be mostly covered by a grant, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, is at this point, if we continue delaying in any way, we are subject to both losing the grant funding and also seeing increased construction costs the longer we wait. Is that right, Mr. Satharaman?
Mr. Mayor, if I can answer, Councilmember Mar, yeah, that's right. So as you know, we have the bids from many contractors bid on the project, and the bids are in a range, very similar range. We don't think we're going to get lower bids if we go back with rebidding this project. Also, if we want to redesign the project and take out elements of the project, then that involves additional funds that we have to expend to do the redesign, and then rebid at a later date. Not sure what kind of bids we are going to get, whether it'll be close to what we have or whether we'll see any savings on that. But the bigger issue is that the ARPA money that was allocated, there is a deadline of December 2026. Now, I'm hearing different things, but to be cautious, it's better to make sure that we expend the funds by December 2026. Otherwise, there's a risk of us losing that money.
Okay, thank you. the amounts, so the commissioners just mentioned Marina Park, adding sand is probably under the level of the requirements for a CIP. Do you agree with that?
Yes, Councilman Moore. Yeah, I agree with that. I think will our staff take a look at it and take whatever steps they need to take to address this issue. And especially if it's a safety issue, they would have addressed it, so.
So what's the story with the bathrooms in Wilson right now?
According to, so when you look at the park assessment, there are some tiles that need to be repaired. There isn't too much of actual work involved. So that's my understanding. Mr. Ryan can answer to that, add to that.
Yep, that's correct. There's some missing tiles in the bathroom that can be easily replaced and cleaned up. That was what the assessment identified as far as the need there. The assessment priced out a full renovation of the restrooms, which I'm not sure is necessary at this time, just due to a few missing tiles. But I think those tiles can be replaced by our staff or by a contractor at a really low rate. We can do that in our operating funds right now.
Okay. And so neither of those need to be in the CIP?
They don't need to be.
Okay. Let's talk about the funding that is allocated for ongoing park repairs. If I'm recalling correctly, and I don't think I agree with the characterization of it as a slush fund by any means. Those are ongoing repairs that are made to the park that don't necessarily come back. I think the example that comes to mind, and this is in my district, is in Tewinkle at Angels Playground. There was quite a bit of resurfacing that needed to be done on the playground material itself. Is that a good example of the types of things that come out of that fund?
Yeah, Councilor Mar, yeah, I wouldn't characterize this as slush fund. We don't save this for anything. We use it mainly for those kind of repairs. The Angels Playground surface do have ongoing maintenance needs. At some point, we do have to replace the whole surfacing, and that's a $200,000 project. And we tried to actually add that to the CIP this year, but with the challenges, we did not. But that's something that will come as a project. But meanwhile, we use those funds to fix the surfacing. The other examples are, we get entire, slides, we have to be replaced. As you heard, many of our parks are rated in a poor condition. But the reason why they're still safe and functional is because we use the playground replacement funds to replace actual pieces of equipment. So we replace slides, we replace swings where needed, and to keep it going, to keep it functional. And if it's unsafe, we do definitely, there was one, it was at a point where we couldn't fix it. This is exercise equipment at Wimbledon Park, and we said we need to replace the whole thing or we have to shut the park. And we did replace that as part of a CIP project. So we do take the replacements of equipment seriously and to make sure the parks are safe for our children.
Okay, thank you. Can we throw up a slide that just shows the totals? If we're taking the amount that's repaying to the CAN, the total CIP funding that's coming out of our budget, I'm just curious to see it all in one place. I don't know if we had it all in one place. This is the deferment, right?
Yeah, we don't have it all in one place. This shows the CAN deferment and the CAN repayment only. But our 5% of the CIP is expected to be $5.2 million based on the most recent numbers that I received.
Okay. Yeah, 5.2 look like the total amount out of the general fund for this next year's CIP.
Yes.
Okay. And then somebody do the math for me. So what is the amount of the CAN that comes out of that 5.2 million?
That is the CAN. So the entire 5% of the CIP works out to be actually close to $9 million, approximately $9. Now, we do bond payment out of that one, so we subtract that. And we also set aside $1 million for fire station bond repayment.
Oh, yeah,
Then-
sorry, 5% of the city budget, not 5% of the CIP. Sorry, I misspoke earlier, but yeah, help me get there in my head.
Yeah, those are those two items. And then we, this year, we also are factoring in the cost of staff involvement in CIP projects of about $800,000. So if you factor in all that, we will be left about $5.2 million towards CIP. Now, we do show 5.5, so there's a potential to add another $300,000 because the CAN contribution is not fully accounted for in the CIP.
Okay. Look, this has been a point of contention for me for a little while. I'm just going to make a point of bringing it up since I'm going to miss the study session that was not scheduled when I booked a camping trip. But the CAN at this point, it's an exercise, as you just went through, it's an exercise in us like coming up with things we can count as the CAN, and it doesn't feel like it's meeting the intent of what the previous council set it aside for. Given that we've got all of this deferred maintenance for both parks and facilities, my recommendation to this council is to focus on a way that prioritizes actually spending the money on the things that are deferred. And even if the CAN has to be smaller, at least we're prioritizing those things as opposed to counting everything in the kitchen sink to try to get to 9 million. So if we're going to set funds aside, let's make sure we're doing that for things that we think are the highest priority, which frankly, our deferred maintenance in our city facilities is really up there for me. And I've talked about this a lot in the past. So I will get off my soapbox. Thank you.
So just while we're talking about the CAN, this might be a question for the city attorney, but this was a kind of a bone of contention of mine in the last budget cycle. In fact, I even voted against the budget in part because of it. It's now the 31st of March. We normally vote, we set aside the first and the second meeting of June to consider and then pass the budget. Do we have time between now and those June meetings to consider the CAN, consider amending it, repealing it, whatever we want to do with the CAN? And do we have time to do that? I don't know whether the council has any appetite for it, but that's what I want to do. Do we have time to do it? That's my question.
Well, we're already going to press with next Tuesday's agenda. If we brought something like that forward for the April 21st agenda, if you moved it forward, past it, whatever it might be, then it would go for second reading the first meeting of May, theoretically, and therefore be in effect when you do finally adopt the budget. However, if we bring it forward on the 21st for direction, it starts to get very tight.
Got it. So the answer, as a practical matter, is, as it relates to this budget cycle, it sounds like is no. Correct?
The answer isn't no. The answer is it would be a real quick hurry.
Yeah, it would be, and probably not the level of deliberation that we would need for the public, and we'd want to talk to FIPAC and so forth like that. So I don't think that that's realistic. So thank you for answering my question. Then we can go on to other folks. I just wanted, well, Andrea brought up CAN, I wanted to ask that question. Yeah, of course. We're on our CAN right now. Let's go. Go ahead. No, go ahead, Mike. Turn on your mic, though. Mike, turn on your mic, Mike.
Next. Okay, thanks. Yeah, just so I have kind of a clear understanding, and it kind of pivots off the CAN discussion we were having there. And just first, so I've got understanding, if we go to slide 16 from the presentation, where we have the deferred projects list, these were the ones that we deferred that were originally part of the 25-26 budget, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And then this is kind of your thought process on this chart on what we can do with these projects. Some of them don't need funding. Some are sufficiently funded. Some we're contemplating potentially moving out to 27, 28. Is that how I read the chart?
That's correct.
Okay. And then as to maybe city attorney, the legalities of this, if we get in, and I guess let me take a step back before getting a look at macro. What I think part of this exercise is tonight, we're heading into the all-city budget, for lack of a better term. And all the different departments and all the different needs of the city are getting ready to be in competition mode. And tonight we're dealing with CIP, infrastructure, and then within infrastructure, we got the parks and all the public works. And the reason there's this competition, it's primarily, other than the grants, we got to look to the general fund. Is that generally a fair statement? See the head nod, but for those,
Yes, sir.
for those
Yes, sir.
listening at home.
Yeah, those
okay.
are all a contribution of the general fund. So yeah,
Okay,
we're
so-
all fighting for a piece of the pie.
Right, so tonight we're kind of looking at CIP and all that encompasses. And then we had the nice integrated look at the all budget that's going to go to 5-pack. Then we're going to integrate all these things. And then eventually we could get to where we were at last year, where, okay, guys, here's how we make everything work. We might have to dip into CAN. We might have to defer some projects forward. That's kind of where this is going, correct? Potentially.
Potentially, this year, we are saying we are going to meet the CAN requirements.
Yeah, and I'll get to that, but just, I'm looking foundationally, legality, and trying to pivot off what I heard just Mayor Stevens or John, since we're in study session tonight.
Yeah.
So with the CAN ordinance, here's a question for city attorney. If we are going to defer further some of these projects that we had voted on last year that were going to be on the 25-26 budget, and maybe we don't have to be able to answer that tonight, but it raises an interesting legal question. Will we need a supermajority vote on that to continue to move these things out further? And will it be necessary for us to find an emergency to justify that further deferral?
Well, let me first differentiate between the capital projects that got deferred in order to cut back on the budget versus the CAN. So we cut those projects back to reduce the CAN for those years. That doesn't mean these projects have to go forward. It just, so forget the projects. We're just talking about the money,
Yeah.
right?
Monies showing themselves and realizing themselves in actual projects.
Right.
They've been earmarked towards projects, but
Correct.
I get you.
Yeah,
Okay.
so what Mr. Sethuraman has said is that this year, the proposed CIP budget includes the full CAN for the 2026-27 fiscal year. And there is also a proposal that we would take 600,000 roughly from the general fund, right, to fund the payment that we agreed to when we set up the payment plan as a result of the prior CAN deferral. So if you were to reduce the CIP budget, i.e. move projects, defer projects, whatever, in such a way that you did bring the monetary contribution from the general fund down below the CAN requirement, then yes. So it took me a long way to get there.
I get there.
But I wanted to make clear that we're talking about dollars, not projects.
At the end of the day, CAN says 5% of the general fund should go towards, and I'm just paraphrasing here, I know I've got an attorney at the end of the thing, but 5% of the general fund goes to capital improvement, brick and mortar types of things.
Correct.
And so, so allocating, I guess that's where the finance guys will get in and do the accounting and try to, and kind of what Councilman Marr was saying, smoke and mirrors or whatever, to say, ta-da, we stuck the landing. And the numbers are, we've somehow identified 5% that we can characterize as going to CAN.
Well, the CAN is very specific about what qualifies.
Okay, and let me stop you there because that's a good pivot to the report. And I know there was some members of the public come down here to hear about parks and things like that, and here we are getting into the weeds, but it is a study session, I apologize. the agenda report, there was the paragraph that I think Councilmember Marr was kind of talking about for fiscal year. It's on page 5 of the agenda report. There was a lot packed into this little paragraph, and I was just curious about some of it. And when they say the proposed general fund allocation also takes into account staffing costs associated with the implementation of CIP projects, estimated to be approximately $800,000. So that's $800,000 in staffing costs that are outside, or explain that, what's trying to be conveyed to me there.
So the CAN ordinance, the description of that and what's eligible for CAN, of course, they are capital projects, but it applies for, it says engineering, design, the construction, project management support, inspections, and other design, services too. So we have dedicated staff to work on these projects. The good example is the police department project that Patrick talked about. The interior paint and carpet. It was a 4-month effort, and we had a full-time staff out there every day and many times weekends working on that project. But if you look at this, we don't have his costs included in any of our budget. He wasn't factored in the cost of the CIP project. We are saying those kind of costs are eligible costs for the project.
And do those come out of the CAN funds, or they're part of our pre-existing staffing?
We are proposing that those kind of costs be part of the CAN allocation in the future.
Okay. And then I'm sorry.
With that, let me.
No, if I can answer briefly here, and I've been here a couple of days. Just gotta
get the lungs working.
Full disclosure.
Yeah.
But I took the opportunity to go read the municipal code and what it says about the capital asset fund, and it's very clear that it says capital asset funds may be applied towards debt obligations are created to fund capital assets. In addition, it goes basically to say that it includes construction, design, engineering, project management, inspection, and contract administration. And it doesn't differentiate whether you use in-house staff or you hire outside consultants to do it. So to the extent that you use in-house staff dedicated to work towards that particular project, it qualifies as an eligible expense under CAN.
And I think you kind of jumped to the conclusion I was going to get to. I was setting it up for not necessarily a softball. There was some public comments that we had received. And my understanding of what I was reading from the public was that somehow you could differentiate the labor and management from the brick and mortar materials, but you don't approach a project that way. Am I correct? You approach a project, if we're going to do a skate park, there's the design, the architecture, the planning that goes into it. And when you use the term staff here, but that's all part of what it's going to take to build that project. Now, I understand we'd like to put as much of that on our pre-existing staff as possible, but there are those instances where if we want to avoid full-time employees and increasing our city staff, we bring in outside project managers and outside contracts. Is that how I look at approaching a project?
Councilman Bewley, we look at it based on expertise needed and our staff availability. So sometimes, with limited staff that we have, we cannot manage all the projects. So sometimes we're bringing in outside consultants to help us manage. But for some projects, we do have our in-house staff implement them too. Now, even for projects where we have an outside consultant, we always have an in-house project manager, because these type of projects are very complex, and we need to protect city interests on these projects to make sure that there are no overruns and the project is being done to city standards. So we have project every single project has city project manager associated with it. Sometimes we bring in additional help from outside, depending on the expertise needed.
Okay, and I will wrap up and cede the floor here, but last wrap up. Again, back to this paragraph, this proposal or these recommendations that we're studying here tonight, you're contemplating allocating $600K from the general fund to cover the payments on the deferred projects. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and then when we get into the big budget and everybody else comes in, compete, wait a second, we don't want to see that 600,000. That's for a later discussion, but that's what you're contemplating. If CIP bucket gets everything it wants, this is what it would look like. And this is how you make the numbers work.
Well, that's a obligation that we're going to
Okay.
fulfill. So that repayment obligation is, we intend to fulfill it.
Yeah,
for
no,
the next
I
fiscal year.
appreciate that, but what was the grand total of the CIP proposed budget? 30-something? And then 12 million of that is the fire station bond?
That's correct.
But incorporated in that is fulfilling the obligation. And we're going to fulfill that obligation by looking to the general fund for that $600,000 amount.
For the repayment portion.
Okay. I got a lot of questions, but after public speaks and the rest of the DICE does. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor.
Yes, Andrea.
Sorry, can I just follow up on that? I just want to be clear, maybe you didn't mean to say this, that we're repaying ourselves because we waived the can last time. So we're dedicating more money to capital projects this year because we didn't do it last year. It's not in any way actually picking up these deferred projects unless there's a note in here that we've added them to the CIP. It is an accounting exercise to make sure that we are spending all of the capital money.
Let me just, I'll refer to what the city attorney explained. The money is different and the project is different contemplation here. Money-wise, the CAN requires that you contribute 5% of your gross general fund revenue to the capital fund each year. Last year, the general fund could not contribute all of it. Some of it was deferred. So was the year prior. So cumulative of those two, financing it over 5 and 10-year period, the payment for that is due next year, 26, 27, is $600,000. And that amount will be teed up as part of general fund expenditure for next year and will go into the capital asset fund. In addition to the 2026, 27, 5% that is going there.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's clear. All right.
Mike.
I'll take one last shot at making it at least clear for me. We're not just paying ourselves back. We're putting funds back in the kitty earmarked for CAN projects.
Yeah, we're putting funds
rather
back.
than just put $600K in and then we can use it for XYZ. We're trying to maintain the integrity of those funds that were earmarked for CIPs.
Yes,
Okay.
that's correct.
Yeah, okay.
And to the extent that the ordinance requires that for every year that you are short, that you finance that and pay back. So that's essentially what we're doing.
So I have a question relating to this. So you mentioned that there's approximately 820 some odd thousand that we're allocating from our own staff, that staff is spending time on capital improvement projects, and then that's being allocated to the CAN. Did we do that in the last 2 years?
Mr. Mayor, this is the first time we're doing this.
Okay, so here's my question to you. You know how like sometimes when you have overpay taxes or whatever, and you go and amend your returns, okay? This is a question for you. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, Kingsley Okereke making his first appearance here in the City Hall, okay? And I ask you this, I ask you this question of first impression as a matter of finance. Are we able, because we're now doing this, which I think is entirely defensible, by the way. I mean, and it's done by a lot of jurisdictions in the context of Measure M2, where if it's properly, if you're able to properly account for it, you can use Measure M2 money to cover some of your specified in-house costs. So I've got no problem with the practice, but why can't we go back and open up the last 2 years to kind of like, by the way, maybe this is a city attorney question, to basically, redo those like you would amending a tax return, and that way we don't have to fiddle around with all these 600,000 and all that falderall. Why can't we just do that and retroactively apply this this device that we're doing this year?
Mr. Mayor, I think you would have to adopt an amendment to the budgets, both the 2024-25,
All right.
2025-26.
We need 4 votes for that, right? Can we
The
not?
problem is we've already had those books audited and closed.
Okay, so those are closed out, and we can't. My analogy to amending a tax return is not apt, is what you're saying.
Well, I'm not sure that as you're wrong. Let me put it that way.
Well, that's a good start. We're getting off on the wrong foot.
How you do it, I have to defer to the city attorney.
Yeah.
Can it be done? Yes. If you find that, to me, when you read the ordinance, it's very clear that what we're doing now is what was intended.
It's defensible.
Yeah. It's defensible, and if you just read it, the way it's written, that's essentially what's intended. So how you go back and adjust prior periods, I don't know if, with that, I can defer to the city attorney, but I don't think it's out of the question to do that.
Right,
But
because we're
how
talking-
far back?
I could make a suggestion here. I think we could, if we could make a determination, and I think we could, to the extent we kept track, and were able to determine that, internal staff costs specifically associated with capital improvement projects had not been included in the CAN calculation, then you could go back and you could make a determination that they should have been, and that the deferral amount, because you don't actually have to change any of the budgets,
Right.
to change the deferral and the repayment plan.
Great. And then this is my only question, is a question of timing, going back to my other piece. That would presumably require a CAN ordinance amendment or repeal. So would we be able to do this thing that I've described, a look back and application of this new policy? Would we be able to do it between now and the time we vote on the budget?
I don't know that it does require an amendment, because.
No, it doesn't. I don't think it does.
No,
But what
I'm
I'm
just
saying
saying-
is if it doesn't require an amendment of the ordinance, it just requires something. I don't know what it requires, but can we do it before we vote on the
require
budget?
Public Works to track the costs associated with the capital improvement projects for those 2 fiscal years, so that they could, and working with finance, make a determination of what the actual deferrals were. And then that could be brought to you as part of your budget discussions to revise the payment plan for whatever is unaccounted for.
All right, thank you. Excellent. Okay. Arliss, you had your light lit up.
No, the attorney filibuster answered my questions here, so I'm good. Thanks.
You're good with all your, okay. Well, I'll jump in because I had a few questions for the PAX team, so we can let them sit down unless they're called back up. First of all, thank you for the presentation. I think what you're describing in terms of a more sort of systematic approach and consistent approach to prioritizing is exactly the direction I think we want to be going in. Why we funded the facilities master plan, why we funded the parks plan, why we funded why we funded the sidewalk assessment, and I think Raja mentioned 2 other assessments or so that we mean now that we have the data we want to use to guide our work going forward. So thank you for getting that ball rolling. I had a specific question on the discussion you've heard tonight on the Wilson Park bathrooms. I want to hear a little bit more about your recommendation, having dug into that, because I don't think your recommendation was to fix a few tiles in the bathroom. So can you describe a little bit more why you pulled that out on the priority list and sort of recommendation on the budget there?
Yeah, actually, in that coming up, I looked back at the park assessment, and perhaps we're realizing discrepancies between what the consultant identified and then what staff is, determining would be the monetary value of repairing that. But Wilson Park received a C. Specifically, what was rated the worst about Wilson Park was its structures. Specifically, its structures was not benches, was not the playground, it was the bathroom and the pergola around the bathroom. And it calls out with images, the wood structure is rotted, it's, splintering, it needs repairs, and the bathroom. And then at the very bottom of the playground assessment for every single park, the consultant created the numerical value, and the consultant recommended a bathroom renovation. And so that's where we're pulling our information and our data. And I will say, I think it's confusing to receive a master plan that we paid so much money for and to take it at face value in seriousness, but then when we actually turn around and reflect and pull data from that, to then be told it's inaccurate, or it can be a smaller sum, or it could be spent through a different, funding source. So, for example, like the Marina View filling of the sand, the consultant identified it would be $31,000, which puts us at the CIP threshold, which is why we then voted on it as a CIP. So that's how we made that decision about Wilson.
Okay, yeah, that's helpful. I think the costs, there may be other reason costs are different, but I would be interested in maybe staff taking another look at the specific needs for the Wilson bathrooms. Several years ago, oh gosh, probably 4 years ago now, right? We built a crosswalk for families south of Wilson to get to Wilson Park. What I'm hearing now is okay, we get there, but we can't stay very long because there's the bathrooms are difficult, often locked, and so on. So I do think that's a high community priority as well. The other question I have for the PACS representatives is, so this values matrix that you guys developed, we haven't heard that summary here at the council. Is that specifically focused on parks facilities, or has there been discussion at the commission on kind of the community services part of your charge as a commission?
That's a really good question. The purpose of the values document was originally around the CIP recommendations, so around facilities. We've yet to go down that road of community services, and I think that we would welcome that.
Okay, I know there's been a lot of discussion on the senior transportation program and
Right.
sort of the cliff, the financial cliff on that. So is that on your agenda, or is that something that you guys are planning to discuss?
We do use it, so it's much more informal, though, in terms of how we're utilizing that document. So people might ask some questions, and they'll acknowledge, drawing from our values document, I have questions around sustainability in this, right? So I would say, yes, it's something that we're discussing, but the very kind of concrete recommendations that we've been making are around the CIP. I think there's a lot of opportunity to put that values document to work in other ways.
To answer your question about the senior transportation program, we saw that twice. We had a huge turnout from the senior community. Staff provided us with 3 options as an alternative to the existing entirely free, no cap, all locations program. And we did vote with a majority in support of variance 2, which was within the average range that seniors voted on. It does have a copay, and it goes to a limited number of locations in favor of medical rides specifically. So hopefully when you guys get that, you'll see that that was what we ultimately voted on.
I do just have to acknowledge, though, there's a slight difference of opinion in some ways. I think that's an interesting topic to raise up, so please stop me if you don't want to hear this. One of the challenges that the commission had around that program was that we showed up to a meeting and hadn't actually seen their final recommendations from city staff until we were actually seated in those chairs. So we did the best that we could in the time that we had. We made recommendations. I mention that because I think it's really important for you all as you're going to be looking at that, just to know that when we do this process again, your commissioners need that information in advance so that we can think about it a bit more. So.
Yeah. Okay. And I think that'll come in the operating side of the budget, right? The transportation stuff is operating, not CIP. Okay. Last question. You mentioned looking at the open space master plan to guide your some of the recommendations. Which master plan were you looking at? Well, let me be more specific with my question. So we have, I think the last published master plan was from 2018. Council years ago approved some additional budget to further update that master plan. Were you looking at old data or new data?
I tend to pull from the 2024 draft master plan, which our commission received and filed. And actually, I remember when here at council, we decided to not allocate further funding to chase this ever, evolving perfect master plan. And I specifically like to pull demographic data because I don't think demographic data has changed drastically in the last, say, 5 years. So it's lengthy. It's downloaded on my computer. We do reference it really often because there's timeless, essential data in there. But at the same time, staff has shared with us that there was a big sports focus when it began, or a lot of projects that were identified have already been completed. And so some of it, you read it and you're like, great, we already did that. But it's definitely a draft, and you can kind of tell that it's been pieced together over the years, but there's a lot of gold in there. And so, yeah, we use it, even though it's technically a draft.
Okay, thank you. This is a note for the city manager, just to, or maybe suggestion to council. I saw in one of our attachments, it was on the list of proposed items not approved, I think, or maybe it was in the 5-year, I don't know. Somewhere in here, there was $250,000 for open space master plan, and I almost fell off my chair, because we've put so much consultant money into that, and I'd love to just find a way to wrap it up, and seeing what the commission has developed in terms of this values matrix, all of the data we already have, our new parks assessment, maybe there's a way to wrap that up through the commission and the work that they're doing. So I'll just leave that there. I'm not interested in putting more money towards consultants on that. They've had their chance. Okay, thank you. Should I go in? Those are my questions for the commission. Should I continue on my others? Okay,
Sure.
perfect.
You have the floor.
Okay, Raja, you on your first slide, I think it was, you mentioned that 30K has been the CIP limit for since you've been here, which is a couple decades now. Right? Yeah. Okay. Is there any reason you think we should change that limit? You didn't recommend it, but I was just curious. Are there operational efficiencies to us raising that limit a little bit? Any recommendations there?
Yeah, Councilman Reynolds, I think there is, we could look at raising that limit because costs have definitely gone up, and what we did 25 years ago with 30,000 is a lot less now. So it's something that we can consider at some point. I'm not recommending anything right now.
Okay, yeah, I would encourage you to think about that as part of this budget cycle. And again, it's about, I think we've raised the limit on a couple other purchasing agreements for exactly the reason you stated. Okay. Can you remind me on the OCTA MOE, I'm already forgetting what that stands for. So do they tell us how much we need to spend? Is that so in a couple weeks you'll get a specific dollar amount and then you'll know whether the proposed budget hits that or not?
Yes, Councilman
Maintenance of
Reynolds.
effort. I got it
Maintenance of
before it came.
effort,
Okay,
yes.
okay.
MOE is maintenance of effort. So it's based on our general fund revenues. They take a percentage of that. So they did a calculation back in 2011 when Measure M2 started and figured how much we were spending general fund for roadway projects, mainly, specifically for projects that Measure M can cover. And they adjust that every 3 years. We are getting a new adjustment number in the next week or so. And, usually we beat that MOE fairly, by a few $100,000, close to $1 million sometimes. So we'll see how it goes up every 3 years. So we'll see what it goes up to now. And we want to make sure that we are within the limits. We have some cushion too, because sometimes they disqualify a few expenditures, and so we want to make sure we beat that.
Okay. So that comes every 3 years. I didn't remember that often coming up, so that helps explain that. In the CIP, did we take any input or request any input specific to the Arts and Culture Master Plan or CIP's recommended from that? I didn't see any. I wasn't sure if we have a process for that yet.
For the city CIP projects, we generally accommodate the needs of whatever arts and culture master plan requirements are, or whatever we hear from our parks, and about incorporating any elements within the project as part of the project budget. So we don't really ask for a new allocation. Like, for example, the recent poetry that was done at Brentwood Park was part of the Brentwood Park budget. So we're not asking for anything specific at this point, but I know there is an ordinance that at some point is going to come forward asking for contributions for arts from not just public projects, but from private. So we'll see when, if whatever the requirements are. If they exceed what we are actually contemplating now, then we need to look at that.
Yeah, okay, so I'm hearing you say we can incorporate elements recommended on arts and culture in existing CIP projects or new CIP projects. My question was, have we made any, or have we received any specific CIP specific recommendations from the Arts and Culture Master Plan? And we haven't. I think we're done with the 5-year master plan. I had requested that council get sort of an update on how that went, and I was just curious if that 5-year effort resulted in any specific CIP recommendations. Do we know that yet?
So we have our Parks Director, Brian Gruner, coming forward, but we do plan on providing an update on that to the council when the PACS Commission comes forward with their work plan to City Council.
Yeah, it will be the Arts Commission is going to be presenting the working plan, and they're going to provide an update to that. But we have not specified specific projects in regards to that. No.
Okay. And this is a new.
It's a new
plan. It's a new commission. It's a new part of our budget. But I think I'm assuming there's a commission meeting between now and the next time this is in front of us. So I think it'd be great to get any recommendations from them for consideration. Maybe it doesn't make it in this budget, but sort of working that into the cycle, I think would be a valuable exercise.
Yeah, we actually have a Arts Commission meeting this coming Thursday, and that is going to be part of the discussion at that point.
Perfect. Okay.
And then we'll bring it back to the council.
Thank you. Okay, back to Raja. Sidewalk assessment. So I think it was in our last council meeting, we did actually update our budget on sidewalk repair based on the ongoing sidewalk assessment. I didn't see any changes in new sidewalk budget. So I was curious if we had any information on the sidewalk assessment to date to give us a sense of sort of how we're tracking on our new sidewalk needs.
Yes, Councilmember Reynolds. So, yeah, I forgot to mention about the sidewalk assessment that's being conducted now as part of all the master plans. So we started on a project where we want to complete the entire city sidewalks in the next 5 years, assessments and the repairs. So far we finished 20% of our city sidewalk completed, the assessed. I think there were Rob can elaborate on this one, but 5,000 different locations were identified approximately, and we fixed 50% of them. And the budget that you approved will help in accomplishing wherever the repairs are for the remaining where there's grinding can be done. But then there are some sidewalks that have to be replaced. So that's a separate project that we advertised and will come to you for award maybe in about a month or so. And then we have current budget available to continue the program. And there are some funds available here that will pay towards that program. That's in the upcoming budget too.
What I'm trying to get at is, what do we know from our sidewalk assessment about, like what the estimated budget would be to fill the gaps in sidewalks? So we have the repair existing sidewalks piece, and then we have like where we're missing sidewalks piece. What do we know? In the same way, we wanted to compare what are we contributing towards facilities assessment versus what do we need. I'm trying to get a sense of that on the sidewalk, on the new sidewalk or missing link piece.
Yes, so that's a separate piece. So thanks for pointing that out. So what I mentioned is the existing sidewalks where we have deflections in the sidewalk that have to be addressed, and all the claims that we get, we want to address all that. The second piece is a missing link sidewalk, and we have a program for missing link sidewalk in the budget. We haven't fully evaluated all the cost for all the missing sidewalk projects. But I just want to point out there are many areas where the neighbors don't want the sidewalks too, so we need to make sure that we factor that. We'll come up with an estimate for that over the next few months and bring back to council.
Okay, so you have the data from the assessment. You need to sort of cross-reference that with where people do and don't want sidewalks.
Exactly.
Estimates, of course. Okay. Yeah, I'd love to just get a sense of.
Yes.
Again, is our current budget contribution like 5% of what we think we need, or 20% of what we think we need?
Yes.
In the same way we're doing on a lot of other areas. Okay. Let me just go through a few other things here. Okay, so in our proposed budget here, I'm in the transportation section, surprise. Local road safety plan update, $150,000. Why do we need an update to the local road safety plan?
So the local road safety plan update is needed every 5 years. Believe it or not, it's almost
when you say is
4
needed,
years
is that a
is needed.
requirement? It's a state requirement? What?
It's not a state requirement, but what the federal government has started doing that is they require that for awarding highway safety improvement project grant. So that's a required, they need a current study every time we apply for that funding. And that HSIP funds many projects, including the signal modernization project, almost $4 million. We got that funding from them. There are many other projects that can be funded using that grant program. It could be all the safe route to school study that we are doing right now. We can go after funding using that grant program. And the study is right now almost 3.5 years old, and it takes almost a year for us to get through that study. So we want to have the budget to get the study started next fiscal year and be compliant with that grant program.
Do they, I'm going to ask you one other question, and then I'll take the other questions on this one offline. So the federal government requires that we update the local road safety plan every 5 years. Do they require a minimum contribution to that update? Like dollar, do they require that we spend a certain amount on that update?
Councilman Reynolds, they require the study to be done. They don't care how much it costs. And our estimate is, because we already have a previous study done and this is an update of the study, that's our estimated cost.
Okay. I'm going to challenge us to try to do a lower cost update, because I just don't know how much actually changes. And I know a lot of the data on that goes into that is free. So I'll leave that there. I would love to see us do that update with less cost. Okay. Okay. Tree planting and small tree care program. Can you explain? It looks like the proposed CIP here doesn't contribute any additional dollars to that. ongoing attachment 1, the sort of current CIP list shows that we have, as of March 17th, only $5,000 left in that. So that leaves me believing we have no money for small tree care. But on one of the slides, it says we're going to plant more trees. So help me reconcile that. Where's our money to plant more trees and care for them?
So the couple of different funds, majority of the tree planting and the maintenance comes from our normal budget operating fund. The one that's referenced in the slide, the capital improvement, comes from gas tax funding. That is specifically for parkway and median trees. So kind of two separate funds. The gas tax fund can only be used for planting trees and maintaining and medians, whereas our general fund can be used anywhere. So that's where we get our small tree care and tree planting funds in our regular maintenance, a majority of it.
Okay, so I'm seeing our line item on tree planting and small tree care down to $5K currently and no dollars added. So who's losing out when that fund goes down to zero or stays at 5,000?
So in the past, that's been a separate CIP project for small tree care and tree planting. That's kind of been moved funded through the gas tax now. And
Okay. So you're saying we're maintaining the dollars, we're putting it in a different bucket?
Correct.
Okay. That's
Councilmember Reynolds,
a good
it used
answer.
to be a smaller dollar amount before. I think it was 70,000 per year or 50,000 per year. Now we are putting 200,000 per year. So we increased the funding for this kind of tree care.
Good. Thank you. I was alarmed to see that, and I'm happy with that answer. Okie dokie. I think those are my questions. I'll let someone else go and chime in if I missed a couple. Thank you.
Anybody else want to go? I've got a few questions. That's okay. First of all, before I answer my questions, Arliss triggered me. Yesterday was a big day in the city of Costa Mesa. It's the 26th anniversary that Raja's been with the city, 26 years. So congratulations.
Means we haven't changed the CIP limit for 26 years, at least.
No, but he's still coming up with innovative ideas,
Why did you shave the mustache? I'm wondering.
even to this day. So, yeah, so thank you for your service, Raja. I'm just going to ask questions, and then I have some comments later. So this is a question I should know the answer to, because I don't live too far away. When you go to Moon Park, maybe this is a Director Gruner question. When you go to Moon Park, is there any like signage or educational information about the moon?
There was a plaque dedicated to the moon there.
Right.
Recently vandalized and gone missing, and we're working on replacing that. But yes, there is a dedication plaque.
I know, but I mean like just to tell people, like we have at Fairview Park, where you say, this thing you see in front of you is the moon, and we walked on the moon, and the moon is X from the distance from Earth, and and the moon is whatever. I don't even know. I don't know about all that stuff, but you can come up with the facts and interesting things about the moon. The reason is because we've got this big thing that looks like the moon, and then we've got families that say it's obstructing my view, and then other families that say, oh, I like to have the moon thing there. Well, it would seem to be like a more engaging thing if there was some communication about, especially for, I'm thinking of the kids, what is the moon? How does the moon fit into our solar system? And so forth and so on. And something like that, I asked you the question because I might as well just give the comment now. That's probably below 30, right? 30,000 to come up with some signage pertaining to the moon. And maybe the community, the local community would appreciate that as an educational thing. Anyway, Wilson Bathroom Park. This might be a PD question. So stop scrolling Instagram and listen up. So we used to have such a difficult problem with people doing mischief in the Wilson Park bathrooms that for many years the Wilson Park bathrooms were shut. And to pick up on one of the things that Arliss said, to the contrary of people saying we are disappointed in the condition of the Wilson Park bathrooms because we have to go there and go home to go to the bathroom. They didn't want it to be open, a lot of them, not all of them, right? There was mix, as I recall. When we opened it, it was a decision made by the council. I think we made it as a council decision, if I'm not mistaken. So how's it going in regard to mischief, issues? I mean, we heard all kinds of stories about people shooting up drugs, all kinds of things, you know? And so there's a real policy decision, about opening up the bathrooms. And now we're talking about the condition of the bathrooms. But how are we just doing on the people's behavior and attracting nuisance and attracting issues to Wilson Park that some of the neighbors don't appreciate?
Yeah, you're absolutely right. In the past, we did have a problem with the bathrooms, having a lot of issues with people using drugs and different things. We've increased our staffing in our park with our park rangers. We do a lot more patrols there, and over the years, we've been able to mitigate that issue. I mean, we still have problems there every once in a while, but it's a lot better than it was when we had to close the bathrooms and ensure people's safety with the closures.
Do you still hear, because I haven't heard it in a long time, but do you still ever hear neighbors advocating for closing the Wilson Park bathrooms?
No, I haven't heard that in a really long time.
Okay, good. Neither have I. I was promised to ask our finance staff some questions. Where are we with the status of the bond financing for Fire Station 2? At what stage of the process are we at?
Hi, Mayor. So currently, we're working with our bond counsel, Jones Hall. We also have a municipal advisor, a Fieldman, and the next steps include financial analysis, whether to determine 20 or 30-year prepayment cycle. We also are going to identify properties that we can pledge for collateral. Once we identify the properties to pledge for collateral, and once the rebuild is complete of Fire Station 2, we can swap Fire Station 2 out as the main source of collateral. But the next steps include getting a credit rating, a bond rating. Currently, we're aiming to get AAA is the highest, but according to municipality bonds, AA would be the highest. And so we're looking forward to getting an underwriter on working to that. And once we get the rating, we'll come back to council on June 16th for adoption of resolutions for the issuance of the bond. And then we'll go out for the bond in July and to secure funding. So the timeline is about July, mid-July.
Okay, then the second related question is, the proposal here is to set aside an additional $1 million toward this bond financing. And I believe we did that last year, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so then that would give us $2 million in like a sort of a reserve fund, right?
Yes, we'll have $2 million.
Okay, so, obviously, if we say yes to that, we say no to something else, okay? So you need to do it now, but as the budget discussion continues, a question I'm going to ask is for the finance team to sharpen their pencil and say, why 2 million? It just seems like such a round number to me, right? And so, because every dollar we put into the reserve is a dollar we can't put into sand at some park to make it safe, okay? So what I'm going to ask you to do, not today, please don't ask now, but at the appropriate time in the coming weeks when we come here, I'm going to ask you to justify why 1 million and why now, okay? Sure. Fair enough?
Fair.
Okay. I have on the comm building project, is there any natural light? Are we going to have windows there?
Yes, fortunately, we were able to integrate an existing window, and we're going to bring in some wonderful outdoor light.
That's great. I think that's just wonderful, okay? I wanted you to say that. I have a couple of comments. I think those are my only questions. Yeah, those are my only questions. I have a couple comments I'll make when at the appropriate time. Does anybody have any other questions before we open it up to the public? Just do a time check. How many members of the public wish to speak? Okay. I'm gonna leave it at 2 minutes. I think that's probably okay, because we probably have people on Zoom too, right? Okay, so 2 minutes.
Mayor,
Yes.
can I just ask a couple more quick questions?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, okay, so this is in the additional projects submitted for consideration. Joanne Bike Trail was on there, lighting. I thought we had, I know a bunch of lighting was torn out in a act of vandalism, but I thought we had replaced, I know I've biked along that path with lighting there. So what, is that why this was crossed out and isn't needed, or what's the lighting situation on the bike trail?
So Councilmember Reynolds, the Joanne portion of the bike trail, which is between Harbor and Placentia, we worked with Edison to increase lighting. So that's why it looks much better over there.
Got it. So from
But,
Harbor to Placentia, that stretch.
Exactly.
That's what I'm thinking about.
But
Okay.
from Merrimack to that particular location,
Yeah.
all those lights are gone too. And the lights on Harbor Boulevard are on the median and they don't light that path well enough. So we need lighting in that stretch still.
Okay.
So it's still a needed project, and I'm working with our city engineer to see if there is some other funding source that can pay for it. So
That seems
if
like
we
a
can.
safety issue. Is that a safety concern?
It's a concern at this point that we want to address. So so we are looking into other options because the cost estimate is fairly high. It's almost $400,000 to replace all those lights. So we are looking at some other options to implement that project. And once we confirm that, we'll come back to you on that one.
Okay. On the same page, Rainbird irrigation controller replacement, that's a relatively low cost, $50K. That seems like potential cost savings. If it's irrigation control, have you looked at how much we would save in water purchases if we do put that in place?
There are some, Rob can add to that.
So, Councilmember Reynolds, yeah, that's our irrigation system. It's currently, it's not communicating. So we're having our contractor and staff go out to program those by hand. So, I mean, I'm not overly concerned about the water savings, but obviously be saving in staff time to not have to go out there and program during rain events. Luckily, we're heading into summer, spring. There's not going to be much of a need to reprogram. But that's only a small portion of the number of controllers that we have out there. It's probably a fifth of the number of controllers we really need to do.
Okay.
So the total cost of that project is actually well over 200,000. So we are looking at 50,000 a year, but maybe we'll start the program a year later.
Got it. Okay. That's helpful. And then on slide 21, where you talk about the funding sources, I'm looking at the bottom three: traffic impact fees, 250, canvas impact fees, and then 100K from park development. Is this, help me reconcile these numbers with like what's actually in those funds. So for example, the traffic impact fee fund, my recollection is it's quite a bit bigger. The ad hoc committee recommended like we actually programmed to spend those funds since we're collecting those dollars. So just help me reconcile that a little bit. Why isn't this 250 amount reflecting the full amount in that fund?
So Councilman Reynolds, you're right that we had a lot of money in this account, but over the last 2 or 3 years, we did fund quite a bit of that. So we are actually pretty close to the, where we want the balances to be. So it has gone down.
We've already programmed.
We have programmed a
in
lot.
previous budgets. Okay.
Exactly.
And park development fees, is it 100K in that fund, or is that?
So
I know there's, yeah.
Park development fees, we don't have much money in that account. We probably have a couple $100,000 in that account. It's not doing well. We are not collecting too many revenues in that fund. So that's why you see a small amount being programmed.
And that's reflecting the limited development over the last decade or so.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. Okay, thank you. That's helpful. Last one, on the Moon Park project, Rob mentioned a lot of coordination. I'm recalling that we got a lot of emails a while back about the 405 underpass and safety concerns related to lighting there. Is that reconciled? And if not, is that something that we could sort of loop into coordination on that?
As it pertains to
On
the
that project?
specific underpass, I'm not aware if that's been reconciled. That I know PD's been out there and working, and we've worked with the county. But I can follow up on that.
Okay. And if not, if there's not a lighting solution, so the concern was it's a pretty long tunnel. It gets pretty dark, even during the daytime, it's pretty dark, which is a safety issue, right? Especially as you mentioned, when people are moving at pretty fast speeds. If there's not an existing lighting solution, would it make sense to coordinate finding a solution on that in our coordination on that project? You mentioned you'll have to coordinate with other agencies. I'm assuming it's OCTA, maybe it's Caltrans.
Yes.
Yes.
Raja is saying yes. Okay, good. Thank you. That's really it.
All right, let's open up to the public. Everybody gets 2 minutes. You got to talk just about these issues. And you're going to hear a beep at 1 minute. Please wrap it up. Okay. We're all good for 2 minutes? You have the floor.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Ramon. I live in the State Streets, and I'm here advocating for Moon Park. I live in a really close-knit neighborhood. We have a lot of great community events, and I know that community engagement is important to the city. We've actually put together moonparkproject.com. We have a website, Instagram page, and we've gathered over 160 signatures. The community is coming forward to you guys saying, hey, Moon Park is a problem and it needs to be invested in. I know that we've already, or at least it's been mentioned, some of the issues, but I have 2 young kids. My son was very excitedly interrupting Raja earlier, but he's 1. My daughter, she's 3. There's 2 separate play equipments over at Moon Park, and that park really is a visual obstruction. So my daughter has no interest in playing in the smaller playground. My son is too young to play in the other one. So if I take them by myself, I can't be at 2 places at once. So this is something that's really important to me. And I know that park assessment was done, and 12 parks, including Moon Park, received a C grade. But there's some distinguishing characteristics that make Moon Park worse than those that just can't be measured by the metrics that were established. Some of those things are just what I talked about is the safety component to not being able to have a direct line of sight between the two playgrounds. Additionally, there's no barrier or separation between the play equipment and the bike trail. These days, I know e-bikes are a really big topic because they can go up to 28 miles per hour without requiring any sort of license or anything. And a kid wandering out onto the bike trail is a very real risk, something that could be extremely tragic. So I'm very optimistic about the $50,000 that have been proposed in community engagement. And I hope that we can stay on that path of prioritizing Moon Park, because as you can see, it is something that is very important to us and very important to the community in the State Streets. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Jason. Live in the State Streets as well. I'm here as a resident and a constituent to advocate for the Moon Park improvements proposed for this fiscal year. I support the proposed commitment of $50,000 for community outreach and to assess the scope of the project for this year. This begins a critical first phase in coordination with county agencies and creates a design that will give the residents in my neighborhood a park that we've been longing for. Many of my neighbors and I have advocated at the PAX meetings for an investment that will address the critical safety issues, many of which Ramon mentioned, such as the fencing, upgraded lighting, improvement to the bike trail access, and reimagining the playground and other park amenities for our families. Moon Park sits at the heart of our neighborhood and has immense potential, but due to neglect, the park is underutilized. As it exists now, the playground is unsafe. The proximity to the unfenced bike trail exposes children to unnecessary risks and presents an urgent safety issue. The lack of lighting poses a security risk. The playground's outdated. In fact, nobody can say for certainty when it was installed. Its layout, as Ramon mentioned, doesn't match what our families are looking for. The staff proposal is a smart way to begin the process and revitalize the park. Investing the $50,000 now will unlock community engagement as we have started to generate, and will further that process as we move forward, and has the potential to serve, with improvements, has the potential to serve thousands of Costa Mesa residents for decades and visitors along the bike trail. I ask for you to move forward with the Moon Park conceptual design phase as proposed, and signal our community that Moon Park is a priority, and reiterate your commitment to completing the project in the next fiscal year. Thank you for your time and your leadership on this issue.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Hello, my name is Sonia Triana. I've been a resident of Costa Mesa for 35 years. And when I first moved here in 1990, I was a mom with 2 young children. Now I'm a retired teacher with 2 young grandchildren. And I've always been active, so I've been a cyclist for 25 years plus. And I'm sorry I lost my concentration when you were talking, but the Santa Ana River Trail and 405 freeway, if you look my name up in your emails, I initiated that with the lighting under the freeway several years ago. It took several years. But I'm here for Moon Park. So now I'm a senior, and I'm interested in Moon Park because of my neighbors. And I'd like you to do something that makes that park all-inclusive. Right now, I'm not able to use it because I'm a senior. There's nothing for me. I'd like to have some exercise stations, some nice picnic tables, a gazebo, something that qualifies so that that park is for everybody. It's all-inclusive. Also, I've called I think the maintenance needs to be a little bit better because I'm always calling the city there's beehives, there's lack of maintenance on the equipment, there's a lot of weeds that are 4 feet tall. And anyway, I would like you to really consider it, and more than anything, make the park inclusive and safe for everybody. Thank you.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. First, I wanted to just say thank you to the council and to staff for all of the efforts and all the proposed projects that will increase our street safety, projects at Adams, at Center Street, along Fair, projects that have already happened, like along Fairview, keep all of our road users safe, and I and many vulnerable road users are very appreciative of all of the efforts in that realm. I think one thing that I haven't seen the narratives for all of these projects, so I don't know exactly what's in all of these. I'm looking at citywide neighborhood traffic improvements, and I don't know exactly what's in that yet, but I can hope that it includes items that promote some neighborhood traffic calming measures. If you're familiar with previous projects, temporary projects along streets like Meyer and some of the more permanent ones like along 19th Street, they just add some simple, quick build traffic calming measures that slow down vehicles. And I know that's one of some of residents' main concerns along their streets is cars traveling too fast and wanting to slow them down so that kids can go out and play on the streets. So I don't know if it's part of that CIP project. It might even just be under the $30,000 CIP range, but more funding to make sure that kids can play safely out in the streets and people can get around where they need to go safely. I'll also just throw out the daylighting law, AB 413, implementing that, making sure that we don't allow parking within 20 feet of an intersection, and maybe that's another place that can be implemented, and maybe also implementing the school zone speed limit reduction that we can do now or that will take effect in 2031. Thank you.
Hi, Ralph.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. Kudos to Council and PACs. That's the way I think the process should work. A commission or a committee makes recommendations. They're here during the study session presenting to you, and you have a good, vibrant conversation back and forth. Unfortunately, FIPAC is next week, so I would say study sessions should be after all the committees make recommendations. Some quick comments. Yes, start the can rollout refurbishment or replenishment, excuse me. although I'm going to tick off staff by saying I think the 25, 26 should be a 5-year amortization, not a 10-year, which would add about $100,000 to the $600K. The city desperately needs a long-term strategic plan. Question for council, and PAC's kind of alluded to this in their conversation on parks, but is the proposed capital budget really meeting council goals? They mentioned the West Side Park development got constantly deferred. They're recommending it. I would also mention energy sustainability. Those projects, there's not been one project in 4 years, not one plan for 2 more years, and that's one of your core goals. Where's those projects? Let me throw this out. Is it mandatory to use the CAN for the fire station bond? That's going to, off the top, take $1 million out of CAN, which was used for the next 20 years or possibly 30 years, depending on what the length of the bond is. You may want to use that money instead for ongoing capital projects annually. Also, talking about the 800K, and staff, correct me if I'm wrong, but there's going to be a corresponding or close to corresponding reduction in general fund expenses. It's not an additional cost, it's a reallocation of cost. What was formerly charged to general funds now being charged.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, sir.
Evening, Council, Mayor. I am a resident of College Park, just across the street, Fairview here, and I want to say I'm delighted with the improvements to city bike infrastructure that I've seen over the past few years. Me and my kids and my wife, we bike to school at College Park, we bike to the Northgate Market, we bike to Wilson Park, where we avoid using the bathrooms, we bike to the beach, and it's truly made our community feel more vibrant and enjoyable and friendly. And I know these decisions take a lot of will and a lot of commitment, and I want to thank you all for your continued effort in making our city brighter in that way. And something I just want to lend my voice to, or in support of, is to give Fair the same treatment, between here and Harbor. There's a lot of kids in the College Park neighborhood across Fair that go to the College Park Elementary School and into Wilson Park. And, some attention to the bike lanes there, to the crosswalks there, would go a really long way to make it easier for them to get to school and to the park and to make it more accessible. So thanks so much for the improvements.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Carla Stagman. I am a resident of the State Streets, have lived there since 2000, and I'm here to advocate for our neighborhood park. I loved your idea about the moon. I've always thought that's something that really should be used as an educational opportunity because we know what it is, but I think a lot of the children could learn and it could spark a lot of creativity and play. There's actually a lot to the structure being that dome where when kids go on top of it, there's psychology too. There's art uses this often where they feel like they're bigger than they are. So there's a lot to that I think is symbolic. We were there recently with neighbors meeting, talking about this and gathering support and just seeing the kids up there. There's nothing to play with on the moon, but they were having so much fun and it was just so sweet. And I think our neighborhood has grown so much over the years and with the new generations, with so many children, if you walk through at any time, you will see strollers and little toddlers. They're everywhere. So I want for them, more than anything, to have a safe park they can go to, where they can keep an eye on their children, not have to split between one and the other. I propose to keep the moon. I think it's really special for that community. And I just see so much potential, and I would love for the city to prioritize it, especially for the safety reasons that my neighbors talked about with the e-bikes. There's just so many great opportunities. Thank you.
Hi, good evening. My name's Riley. I'm also a resident in the State Streets. I've lived there for about 8 years. I am one of the ones with a stroller. I have a 5-month-old at home. And though we are not at the age to play at the park yet, I walk through every single day. And I was there over the weekend at a little Easter egg hunt event. It was great. There were tons of families that came out. And I had a lot of parents say, oh, it's so great that we had an excuse to come to the park this weekend. And I was kind of like, well, what do you mean? Don't you guys come to this park all the time? And they said, unfortunately, we don't. We're going to other parks. They don't feel necessarily super safe in that environment, which I thought was really interesting and ultimately pretty sad for the community. So having my little 5-month-old, we've been in the State Streets for 8 years, and I hope that it's in better condition and, in the future when I have a little baby who's able to play there. So, I'm here on the Moon Park project. Thank you.
Anybody else? Anybody on Zoom?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, Matt, please.
Matt, you have the floor.
All right. Good evening, Mayor and council members. My name is Matt Garcia, and I'm a resident of Costa Mesa. As I reviewed the CIP, what stood out to me is the scale of spending concentrated at Fairview Park. There are already multiple major projects either underway, funded, or planned, including roughly $2 million for bluff restoration, $2 million for mace restoration, and additional master plan implementation and restoration efforts totaling at least $5 to $6 million. At the same time, the city is deferring other capital projects due to funding constraints. Just last December, more than 155 community members wrote the council regarding the draft Fairview Park master plan, asking the council to stop the master plan update or make significant changes to the current direction at Fairview Park. Please evaluate the community benefit of the significant capital investments moving forward. Council has an opportunity to provide a clear response to the community's December feedback. I kindly request clarification for how the approximately $10 million in state funding received in 22-23 was or is being allocated across these projects, and why Fairview Park might be receiving such a large share relative to broader community needs. Additionally, the staff reports supporting these projects lack basic detail. There is limited quantification of problems, limited explanation of prioritization, and no consolidated view of total spending in the park. Before continuing to advance additional projects or contracts in Fairview Park, I would strongly encourage council to take a step back, evaluate the scope of spending, and ensure that these investments are justified and aligned with the broader community benefit, that they're not just efforts to fence off and restrict the community's balanced use of Fairview Park. I support PACS's recommendation to find ways to reduce spending at Fairview Park. Thank you for your time.
No
Thank you,
further
Matt.
speakers, Mr. Mayor.
Close public comment. Council, Council, now we'll take your, direction to staff. We'll start with Mike.
Oh. No.
All right, Jeff.
No,
Jeff, you go.
I'll defer to
He's a senior
6.
member.
Jeff, go.
All right. I'm going to be quick, Michael. I know you got a lot of wind in those lungs. All right. I say that with love. So on Moon Park, interesting. I'm wondering, and thank you, Arliss, for bringing up arts, because sometimes I'm very into arts, and they haven't been on my mind lately. I'm wondering how we could get arts involved in the Moon Park project and the moon itself. I think that's great. I agree. Mine aren't so little anymore, but I have a 12-year-old who won't go to the park with me anymore, but I know how important that is to the kiddos. And so Fisher, if you're listening, let's think about that. See if we could make some recommendations and see how we can get involved in Moon Park. Maybe some sort of art project over there. It'd be cool to see. Initially, I was going to ask Raja a bunch of questions, but I figured why ask questions and give him the opportunity to tell me why we can't do things. So I know that and thank you to the PACS folks for all your hard work. I mean, it's a big deal that you guys, we need your help, and I'm just bummed that my guy Jason Kamala isn't here, but I know he's probably listening, and I really want to give him a nod for helping me understand a lot of this huge study that they did with the consultants. District 6 has got a multitude of parks that are at the end of their life, and I'm not going to be so bold as to say that we need to focus only on on District 6, Harper Park. Appreciate it. That's awesome. What's happening over there. What I'm going to do is focus on one. I'm going to focus on Heller Park. Heller Park it's been at the end of its lifespan since the 2018 master plan. And I would like to see, and I know it's already recognized in the 5-year CIP, and I appreciate that, and so is Lindbergh. We're going to leave Lindbergh out of this, and we'll focus only on Heller. I know that the bathroom is in desperate need of repair. It's been in desperate need, and it's a safety risk for folks that I happen to live right near there. I see many flag football practices taking place there, and it's utilized in a lot of different ways, and the bathroom is disgusting and a safety problem. I'm wondering, it's already recognized in the 2030 time frame, and I'm not saying 26, 27, but I'd like to see it move back to maybe 2028. And if you tell me, no, we can't do that because the money is not there, what my compromise would be, can we do I'm not going to ask, a compromise for me would be a phased approach, maybe just the bathroom, move the bathroom back from 2030 to 2028 at a minimum. I would like to see Heller addressed. It's in terrible shape. And I have the actual folks come knock on my door at my house and ask me what the hell I'm doing up here on the dais. And so I'm going to advocate for, I say that, they don't really, but they do knock on my door and ask about Heller Park. So that is my pitch for the evening. Thank you very much.
All right, Mike.
All right, thanks. Yeah, just a few comments. First off, and a few people have said it, Ralph and Jeff, but kudos to PACS and their commission and the work they've done, and actually additional kudos to city manager and staff. I think, and Ralph I just want to underscore, I really think their involvement, their engagement, their citizen advocacy, the time that they put in to roll up their sleeves and use their expertise to volunteer and provide these services to the city, and the fact that city manager and staff has given them the stage and the opportunity to convey their work product to us. And I think we're moving in that direction with FIPAC, and that's citizen government. You know, we have these committees, we have these commissions, and you guys inform us, inform staff. So just kudos to staff and management. I know I've only been here a year, but listening to PACS tonight, you could see the awe on their face that they actually had a forum to come in here and speak, and it doesn't appear that has been the case for quite some time. So I'm glad to see that. I heard some commentary tonight on skate park and some of the other, and actually it started with Mayor Stevens, pursuing this private-public partnership thing, and I'd like to see us get beyond a wish and a hope. It's a wonderful idea, but I'd like us to see staff, if we can kind of get more intentional about that. I mean, we identify projects that might be ideal for public-private partnership, whether they're libraries, parks, or skate park, and then we come up with a plan on identifying some potential stakeholders, partners in the city, and we come up with a plan on how we present them with these partnership opportunities. But rather than just continue talk, boy, it would be nice, it'd be great, let's be intentional about it and actually generate a list, generate a way to move forward, and let's find some money. It seems to me we've got some great industry leaders, some great stakeholders in this city, and it'll give them an opportunity to promote themselves and to get some great publicity and to do something great for the community. And not to belabor Moon Park, I think that they were strongly advocated for tonight, and it's unfortunate that a lot of the citizens left. I just want to say kudos for you for coming out here tonight and expressing your concern. But I just elaborate. There was a discussion or in a slide about, we're going to have to coordinate with various agencies because we've got that border with OCTA. But again, back to funding. I'm all about finding funding. Is there, and I'm sure you guys probably do that when we're in there looking to budget, looking to fund these projects, but it seems like that's an opportunity to ask the county or OCTA to kind of share the expense of some of these improvements, to get broad in our thinking. And let's just not stop at the border and see if they're willing to contribute to some of this, the funding of this project. So rather than private-public funding, let's have public-public funding and get an additional public agency to contribute to and we have other parks in the city that border county land or whatever. So when we get into these projects, and then just for my own information, when we're looking as a staff at obtaining funding, in particular for CIP projects, it's kind of cart before the horse or the other way around. Do we identify our projects and then go look for what potential funding we can get? Or do we look what funding's out there and then, or is it a kind of a science or an art form? In 26 years here in the city, maybe you figured out, but is there a way? Do we go list first, find funding, or do we, hey, we just, the government's just releasing funds for XYZ, maybe this project that we hadn't thought about would be a great candidate? What's kind of the internal process there?
So, Councilman Beauty, the first thing that we do look at are the needs. What are the city needs for different areas? Could be parks, streets, facilities. And then, yeah, we don't shy away from asking for funding. We are quite shameless in that way. So we get quite a bit of grant funding, and whether it's asking for appropriation at state, federal level, or whether it's going after competitive grant programs to get funding. So we try all means to get funding, and we try to be as creative as we can with the funds that we have to implement the projects that are out there. So.
Okay, that's all I got, and just great work by staff, and we're putting together this thing. We're heading into the budget season, but I think this was an initial good first launch to some degree.
Thank you.
Lauren?
Thank you. Thanks, John. So I know I already said this earlier, but I want to thank PAX. They really did a good job on the parks assessment, introduction map, and how to go through, at least for us, how to explain what's identified as A, B, and C rating, and how we can look to improve some of the things that we're trying to do up here for the constituents for our parks. So I just want to go into a couple of things, and some of the questions I'm going to ask, you don't have to answer right now, but I would like to see what we can do. One of them is community gardens. That comes up a lot, but we don't really have community gardens anywhere that I'm aware of that we utilize, at least at this side of, maybe in the west side, but at the parks in my community, we don't have any. I'd like to see that. If Giesler is a good spot, I would like to see us utilize that. That would be something that's great. Another thing is, if we could look at some of these desert parks that are, say, a 15-minute walk, if we could utilize some sort of a community engagement where we can funnel kids and people to these parks, that would be great if we could look into something like that. I know that we have a lot of daycare and stuff like that at Lions Park. Maybe we can introduce something like that. That would be great for the community. And then last but not least, I would really like to identify what we can do to improve the restroom facilities for these parks. If it really is that, I know that at, was it Paularino? Oh no, yeah, Paularino Park. It's a pocket park. There used to be restrooms there. And when I talked about putting the restrooms back there, I was met with a lot of resistance. So I know that's a hot topic, but if we had clean, usable bathrooms that were monitored regularly, I think that would be something good for the community. So right now, like I said, we don't need answers for that, but it's definitely something I want to make sure that we're moving forward on, because I also have heard a lot from my constituents about community gardens. So, all right, that's all I have. Thanks.
Andrea, you want to go?
Yeah, look, good job. I know we're going to be struggling with our next budget, but this seems like a very reasonable proposal to address some of the things that we know have been a concern. I like the idea of starting the process on Moon Park, and I'll just say for those that are here to talk about Moon Park, it is a process, right? Like, we're gonna start it, we're gonna have some conversations, we're gonna look at some initial designs, but like, for the woman who said she had a 5-month-old, your kid will be walking by the time we have a park like that they can actually go to. So just setting expectations early. I would like to dive into the Wilson Park restroom question a little bit more. So maybe when we come back for the actual finalization of the budget, we can see maybe there's a good, better, best solution, right? If we can just use some maintenance funds versus anything that looks more like a capital project, just to get a sense of what our options are. Support community gardens. I think the first step in that, kind of going back to the Moon Park discussion, the first step is, I would like the data, who's on the waiting list, what's the demand before we just start talking about converting all of our parks into community gardens. I don't think I answered this earlier, but I don't know, that might have been me that floated Neth Park as a sculpture garden back when I was on the Cultural Arts Committee. The thing at the time is we had just received a donation of the sculpture that's sitting out there, and so we thought there might be more coming, and that was the conversation about like, what happens if we get more sculptures, where are we going to put them? And putting them around the corner from City Hall seemed like a good idea. So don't hold me to it. I think there's plenty of other good ideas about what to do with Neth Park. So the question about how do we choose projects? So now we have a facilities condition assessment. We have an assessment of the sidewalks, condition and missing. We have our parks assessment. I mean, we have an abundance of information about what needs to get fixed around here. I'm pretty sure the facilities condition assessment said we should spend $11 million a year just to get our facilities up to par. It would be interesting. This is something I would normally ask for in the mid-year, but it would be interesting for us to take a look at smushing those together, even if it's just a high level, and saying, theoretically, what should our CIP be driven by over the next 5 to 10 years if we just did the bare minimum to keep our facilities shipshape, our sidewalks repaired, our roads in good condition. I think we would find that it's probably on the order of 15 to 20 million. So that being said, we shouldn't have an issue funding the CAN. We know that there's plenty of work to do. The challenge for us is reconciling all of the work that we know there is to do with the available budget that we actually have. And so, look, I don't think we need to go into it too much during this meeting, but I'm just going to put it out there. Look, I would be in favor of, once more not following the CAN this year if we were to come back later in the year with something that was right-sized, made more sense for our city, and is much more in keeping with the plan that I think we all need in order to maintain our facilities over the long term. That's it for me. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You want to just go down the list? We'll go with the Mayor Pro Tem.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, staff, for this presentation. I think one thing we leave with today knowing is that our parks are very much popular with residents, and they want to see a lot of improvements when it comes down to it. I echo the statements made by most of my council peers. I think focusing on Moon Park would be really smart. I think focusing on Wilson Park would be really smart. And I think focusing on Marina View Park, as mentioned by our PACS Commission, would be really smart. Anytime we have a chance to really make these targeted improvements that will improve the park drastically, I think it's worth our investment. In terms of bigger picture, I think for me, I still believe what I said about before, which is copying things from other cities that work is really smart. And I've the best system I've seen for park improvements has come from the city of Cypress, where they've designated a park fund. And once that fund is filled up to an adequate amount, they renovate the oldest park in their repertoire. Obviously, we have a lot more parks than Cypress does, but I think that model could do a really good job of helping our residents see constant improvements in parks in the Costa Mesa. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the parks. Other than that, I really appreciate the work we've done. I know we're having to make some decisions to see what we prioritize for infrastructure. And I just want to say I really appreciate your thoughtfulness in choosing the right ones to move forward. So thank you.
Thanks, Manuel. Arliss?
Yeah, thanks. Thanks to staff, to our commissioners who presented, everyone in the public for their input tonight. I'll admit I was a little bit afraid to open the staff report because I know it's another challenging year, and I was pleasantly surprised about how you've planned or proposed this CIP. I was worried it was going to be like skin and bones, and I'd be bummed that things were missing that I was hoping to see. So overall, I'm happy, but of course I have some suggestions. I really like Councilmember Mara's recommendations on the smushing. I'll use her word, but just again, really, we're not going to be able to totally right size or adjust our CIP planning based on those assessments that are still coming in, but really starting to compare them, I think, is a valuable exercise. And so I'd like to see that. It may be too optimistic, but I'd love to see the 5-year plan start to reflect some of the lessons of those assessments. I know they're not all done yet, but starting to move in that direction I think would be valuable. I'm going to have questions offline and ahead of the final budget process about including dollars for staff time in the CIP, and my primary concern there is just making sure we're not like double counting dollars towards staff time. It makes sense to me if we're counting dollars towards hired contractors for project management, because that's incremental labor supporting implementation of our CIP. And so I just want to make sure I understand that. I don't fully understand it yet, but I just want to make sure we're not double counting labor there. I support the recommendations from the PACS Commission, primarily because of the thought put into it and the kind of the values matrix that they gave us a glimpse of today. I really like that kind of thoughtful approach. I think they said it was unanimous approval on that prioritization matrix. I think that's a really good way to approach prioritizing projects going forward. The one thing I'll say I do want to continue dollars towards the Fairview Park efforts, but I'm really interested in those dollars going towards aspects of the master plan that are activating and creating opportunities for people to engage in the park. So one of those, especially where there's maybe considerations of trade-offs. So one of the things, for example, that has been discussed is, lots of kids want to bike in lots of places. Obviously, I'm supportive of that. We want them not to bike on, sensitive, sacred spaces. So can we create small biking facilities, a small pump track at Fairview Park? So that I'm interested in implementing those types of projects. Commissioner Martinez mentioned the neighborhood traffic improvements budget. I did notice that we had a slight downward tick there, which to me seems inconsistent with my experience of more and more residents saying, please help us slow down vehicles in our streets. So I think if we can reduce the cost of that local road safety plan update and maintain our budget towards neighborhood traffic improvements, that would make me very happy. All the park stuff is exciting. I think we heard from our comments tonight how valuable parks are to neighborhoods, creating gathering spaces, opportunities for neighborhoods neighbors to connect with each other. Just want to remind of the note that our commissioners gave us is that there's lots of parts of the city that are park deserts where there are no facilities for neighborhoods to gather. I know it's not easy just to find land and build parks, but I would be interested in, and this is what I was hoping that our master plan would do a while back. Maybe there's, I'm just going to throw out 50K because that seems to be our steady amount, but 50K towards, and maybe this is something staff can do, maybe this is something our commissioners can do, but towards proposing solutions for pocket parks or green space in our park deserts. So what is the menu of solutions to address the fact that many residents in Costa Mesa do not live within walking distance of a park? And then I love, in terms of park design, when we are looking at that design, I love Commissioner Pettis's comment about like, let's bring in the arts and culture discussion there, ways to activate the park. I loved the comment we heard from someone who's no longer here about making sure we're planning for seniors as well. So there's a lot of good designs on planning for people of all ages. I know teens often get forgotten in park design as well. Yeah, those are oh, and I really like the suggestion about looking for sponsorships maybe to offset some of the costs on the pretty incredible skate park facility that we're going to be constructing. Thank you.
Okay. So Kingsley, welcome. This is it. It's all fun from here on out, right? So I just want to say, maybe one of the most impactful slides that we just kind of flipped right over was slide number 2. You don't have to put it up again. But that's where we talk about all the people that work in the Public Works Department. And Raja, we clap for you for 26 years, but you've got an amazing team. And it's not just, yeah, let's clap for the team. Yeah, Raja wants to clap for the team. It's not just the CIP, but it's like the things that you do on a daily basis. I just had a conversation with Raja today about tagging that I saw out in the community, and he's got a whole team that addresses that. There's a reason why, if you drive through Costa Mesa, you don't see a lot of tagging, but in other communities you do, and it's because of Raja's team. We just had a thing in Mike's district where the Lower Birds people were asking us, how come I can't get through the gate on Adams to get into Balearic Park? And his team was able to come up with a good solution for that. And then I had an angry constituent who was mad about all the potholes in the neighborhood and wondering why I, as the mayor, couldn't see the potholes in front of my own face. And she sent they sent it to Raja, and all the potholes were fixed. So this is the daily basis stuff. And then this is the big picture, these things that we do over time and that are part of the budget, these projects. But there's a whole team of people that are doing great work in that department. And I want to thank them and acknowledge them. A lot of great things that are happening, just amazing things that are happening that have been a long time coming. I mean, again, as in my neighborhood, to think that we're on the verge of actually doing the Adams improvement from Royal Palm to the River Trail is just unbelievable. I mean, you talk about no sidewalks. That's like been the Pony Express Trail for the entire time since 1953 or before that. And we're finally going to make that. And that's great, and it's on this. So I've been perseverating about, though, the moon. It's all I can think about is the moon. And I really think we're onto something about Moon Park and the educational aspects of it. The moon itself is so important, not just scientifically, but as a inspiration for art and also politics and geopolitical things. So I was named after President John Kennedy. I was born in 1963, and you might remember that, or probably very few of you remember this. I don't even think Kingsley's old enough to remember this, but in May of 1961, in a address to the Joint Congress, John F. Kennedy said, by the end of this decade, the 10 years, we're going to put a man on the moon, and we're going to return him back to Earth. And we did that in July of 1969. And that's like something that we really don't do anymore. You hear, I'm not going to get too terribly political here, but we just don't hear, and that became known as the moonshot or moon goals. And that was President Kennedy, and we did it. So many things that we can learn and children can learn about the moon, okay? And we have a moon in our park. So let's use it to teach about our country and art and science and the great things. And I think that the community will celebrate that. Another project that's not, I don't think it's on anywhere on the, but we were talking earlier about what type of projects can the Arts Commission talk about at their meeting and maybe move forward, not for this year, but for years in the future. And over at Tewinkle Park, there's a little amphitheater. And I mean, I've always visioned, but it's not going to happen in my term, people doing like little Shakespeare in the park or performances in the park at that amphitheater. And it seems like it's just not in shape to do that. And that could be a private-public partnership, to Mike's point. And with respect to that, staying in Tewinkle Park area and going to Mike's point, yes, absolutely. We can't slow down. And with all due respect, and I do thank you to Cheyenne and Kelly for coming in. The one thing that they said that we have to move forward with the skate park. We're going to pick a contractor at our next meeting. At least that's before us at our next meeting. We don't want to delay this any further. However, Mike makes a great point, and it's been made before, and it's been made by Kelly and Cheyenne. Let's get some private donors to that. And the way to do that, quite honestly, is let me help you, okay? Because, you all know me as John, but in the world, nobody cares about me, but they want to meet the mayor, right? They want to take a meeting with the mayor, and if the mayor asks them to do something, they're more likely to do it. So put me on the list and use the mayor. That's what we're here for. And the council members too, especially if it's in their district. They should be involved in that. I like the idea that we talked about. It's worth at least exploring, is to look back on the can and see if there's anything to that. I think it was Mike that made a good point about, or somebody made a good point about the aligning the goals. It was Ralph. Ralph made this point. And I've always thought, and again, it's not going to happen in my term, but it's something to think about, is it seems like we should have more solar, right? Solar in the parking lot, things like that, solar projects at parking lots and in areas. So that's something, I don't want to add more projects, but that seems like it would be worthwhile, then at least in keeping with our goals. The new council's going to come in, 4 of us are termed out, there might be completely different goals. But if environmental sustainability is still a goal of the city of Costa Mesa after we're gone, seems like that would be a way to address it. And then the other thing I just want to say with parks quality, I'm willing to have a discussion certainly about the park deserts and stuff like that and building parks, but first of all, there's some areas of the city that are just not conducive to building parks. Like one of the areas that's a park desert is like off of Anton and Sakioka and Town Center and that whole area in Lawrence District, where I've spent half my life working. There's really no park space there, it's all commercial use and then some heavy, high-density residential use. So it's understandable that there's not parks there. And then that's true with some of the other parts of the city too. We've only created, to my knowledge and recollection, we've created one park in the last 10 years, the Perez Park, and then we have created the 1 acre spot at which is essentially used as a park at Lions Park, which I think is really good. One of the things we did, and I remember Lauren was really involved in advocating for that, is we opened up the Luke Davis Field. And so we've talked about that for years as a way to get people to be able to experience open space, to work with the school district, to open up more school sites and open up more places for free play, as opposed to building a park. I've probably told this story more times than I should have, but when I grew up in a town of about 50,000, we had 2 parks. And I'm not suggesting that was good. By the way, they were good parks. They were really good parks, and I'll get to that in a second. But we had all of the school sites were open. So when I was growing up, I didn't feel any lack of parks, and school sites had playgrounds and all that stuff. So it was just all provided, so I think we can be a little bit more creative, and we don't need to take on the entire burden, and we can collaborate. And we've done this before, and we've talked about it, but I'm not sure we've really focused on it lately, and certainly not executed to the whole potential of that program to use school sites as places to play and in open space. And then in terms of just the park condition, you know, I think there's a sliding scale in terms of the park condition. I don't like to hear as much as anybody that we're in a C grade with respect to 12 of our parks on the one hand. On the other hand, I'm glad we have those parks, right? And so there's a quantity quality, what do you call it, like a sliding scale, that if we had 20 parks, they'd all be A's. But I'd rather have 32 parks with 12 C's and maybe a couple of B's and some A's than 20 A's. Because as the parks commissioners pointed out, particularly Cheyenne, you know, when you really look at it, some of those parks that are C's can get up to the B grade with just a little bit of safety work. So I'm proud of the work. I'm proud of the number of parks we have. If we can have more, great. If we can work with the school district, great. But I'm proud of the work we're doing in that area, especially lately with all the MIN money. And I like to keep it up, and I appreciate all the work you're doing. And this is pretty close, I will say, from a budgetary standpoint. I think we've learned something tonight. We've had a chance to express ourselves. The bolts aren't completely tightened, but they're getting close. And I really appreciate the work that we've done. And I also, this has got my notes all over it, but for the public, one of the council members asked for this, which is a 10-year run of everything that we've spent on public works projects. And it adds up to almost $250 million. So that's pretty good. So thank you, Raja. One more clap. All right, unless anybody has anything else, we can stand adjourned. Okay, good, thanks.